Welcome back, everyone, to our X-Men special for the Fake Nerd podcast.
X-Men film special.
X-Men film special.
Oh, we talk about House of X for another hour?
No.
Aw, damn.
We are talking about this is our dedicated special to talking about the X-Men film universe. We once called the Foxmen.
I didn't call it that.
We had a whole episode about it once.
We actually did, yeah.
Brandon means he titled an episode where we talked about the X-Men films. The Foxmen discussion.
Oh, okay, I got you.
I did. So this will be about the, what is probably the longest-running superhero franchise
For now.
for now.
As far as years.
Yeah, 19 years, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. This is all the X-Men movies, so full spoilers. I don't know if they care anymore. But with me, as always, is Ben Magnet.
X gonna give it to you.
Ryan Eliopoulos.
I'm here as well, X word.
Sparks Witty.
I have no witty things to say at the moment.
You can leave now.
Thanks.
The door's over there.
And joining us for this special, Mike Matola.
What's up?
The biggest fan of the X-Men I've heard.
Oh my god,
Oh,
huge!
totally.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
as big as Ben with Stephen King.
I
Almost, almost as close.
I don't
you guys
know-
never should have told me that.
I regret everything.
I love it. Yeah. We're being facetious, but I actually don't know how much attachment you have to the X-Men not in the films.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, if we're just gonna start, I grew up with having a giant, maybe like 11x17 book that was a Where's Waldo, but it was for X-Men. And I
Ooh.
fell in love
got
with
it.
that book.
Uh-huh.
I didn't read any of the comics. I didn't see the cartoon. It was like 90s X-Men, but boy, was that a prized book.
Got
I
it.
knew what Cyclops. I knew all the characters and their power. Didn't know any storylines. It was
Sure.
It was just static. Each page was just huge.
Boy, I
battles.
could find these characters for you.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
could
yeah.
find them real good.
But
Didn't know what
just
that character looked like.
Oh, great! So I fell in love with that at first.
Did you just like walk through comic stores and then it'd be like, boom, found Cyclops today, walk out.
I'm really into comics. I'm doing this really well.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of my X-Men knowledge came from the cartoon and the Marvel vs. Capcom games.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
dude.
Specifically Marvel vs. Capcom 2, because they put frickin' Marrow on the cover.
Yeah.
I had no idea who she was, but she could use her bones as like some spike stuff.
MVC2 is good because they had a lot of weird characters like it had like a Sentinel on there and it
Yeah,
had like
they
the
did.
Nightmare. It had like a lot of really like obscure characters.
Yeah.
So did it ever expand past that book for
I
you?
mean,
Did you
yes,
ever venture to the comics?
I would.
Did you-
I would read some comics here and there, and but not too much until literally after the movies came out, and then I kind of because was the first one 99,
2000, yeah.
2000, and then like obviously it all kind of got bigger and stuff, and then I got into the comics, but I never was like an avid collector. I grew up a DC guy.
Yeah.
I grew up a huge DC guy, and then DC got horrible, Marvel got great. So it was this weird transition.
That happens all the time.
Yeah, it was
They always
but that
switch.
was about and so now I'm like just burnt. Now with Marvel's Unlimited, I'm just burning through reading
Sure.
old comics and
Hell
stuff,
yeah,
and
dude.
really enjoy the characters, and especially like how even the X-Men are like with the Avengers, and just they're so good at crossing through everything now. The characters, it's not even like they're one piece of a world now.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's really even hard to keep them
Like
as
again,
X-Men now.
like
you know?
half of those
Half of them are
X-Men
in the Avengers.
are Avengers
Yeah.
at this point. Yeah.
So they're not dear to my heart. They're not. So
Sure.
I have none of this is like, well, no, because I like this and it should be this way because that's how I remember it. Like it's not that. It's more just nuts and bolts stuff that bothers me about them.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it.
Wait,
Where do we
even
wanna start?
begin?
Do we just start at the beginning?
I think we'll
I'll
start at the beginning.
Start
Yeah.
at the beginning.
We're just
There's
gonna go through it. Yeah.
My blanket
Yeah.
statement. There's no good X-Men movie.
Hard disagree.
Yeah, right.
Now you're
right?
saying
Isn't that interesting?
these are bad films or they're bad X-Men movies.
A little bit
of both.
Now,
Got
now, preface. I'm talking about X-Men movies.
Yeah.
Logan
Uh-huh.
is not an X-Men movie.
I would pretty
That
much
is a
agree.
Wolverine movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hard agreed.
Yeah.
That is, you're right. that
So
It
if
makes
a
sense.
movie is called X-Men something something, that is an X-Men movie. If
Uh-huh.
the movie's called Wolverine, he's in space. It is not an X-Men movie.
But X-Men
I think I missed that
Origins
one.
Wolverine
Oh,
That is an X-Men movie.
okay. You know what? It's
both.
still. I wouldn't count it, but it still supports my thesis. So
Sure.
I don't even care.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's
Also,
fine.
it's horrible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I mean, I didn't really mean this like I meant it because the only X-Men shirt I have is a Deadpool shirt, and he's just screaming tacos.
Right.
And
Well, here's the deal.
and
Deadpool and
unfortunately-
Deadpool 2, really good X-Men movies.
Right.
You know, like they really built the world out.
yeah, right.
Especially Deadpool 2, suddenly this world was like, oh, this world's built if there's mutants in it.
Uh-huh.
It's not, we took 1999 world and X-Men are in it. Like I think that's the biggest sin of the X-Men movies.
I don't feel like when we talk today, I don't feel like we need to talk about Deadpool or Deadpool 2, obviously. I don't feel like we need to talk about Logan, because everybody loves Logan.
Yeah.
I don't think
And the
anybody's
two
going to
Deadpool
argue about
movies.
it at this table. We don't need to discuss
And
it.
those movies are
It's
good,
fine.
too.
I do think we can touch on the Wolverine and Origins Wolverine, though, because they are intrinsically tied to other X-Men films.
Jean Grey is in the Wolverine, so yeah.
So
Yes.
Mike started with "There's no good X-Men movie."
Yeah.
I think there are more good than bad X-Men movies. That's where I stand on the franchise.
I think we could talk about 2 being good,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's not
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
I
can
think-
you guess what 2 those are?
X2.
And
X-Men.
X-Men.
No. X-Men one's horrible.
Days of Future Past from you.
Days
yeah?
of Future Past.
Yeah,
Mm.
those are the 2 good ones for me. Like the 2 ones that
those
stand up
would be the
most.
best, but then they just have so many problems. Like,
Yeah,
what's it doing?
and real quick for me, like I am the only like real hardcore X-Men fan here. So from the get-go, these aren't X-Men movies for me.
Thank you. Oh my gosh,
No,
thank
like,
you so much.
From the beginning, like, yo, I love Hugh Jackman. He's not Wolverine.
That's in my notes.
Storm is not a
These are
character.
in my
Cyclops
notes.
is not a character
Sure.
for a decade.
The costumes wrong.
Yes.
See,
So-
Iron Man, when they did Iron Man, they correctly they nailed the tone that
Yeah.
they were able to copy. The first X-Men movie is so not an X-Men movie. It's like, what if it was The Matrix, you guys?
Basically.
Do you want to just make it The Matrix?
Yeah.
And then it screwed up the tone for the rest of the movies. The tones
Sure.
are so wrong in every movie. It's almost like it's appalling, if you will.
They almost got away from that tone, but then Bryan Singer came back
Yeah.
and then kind of reverted
God.
back.
Uh-huh.
to
Because
the
First
tone.
Class is a very different type of movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People always bring up First Class as being great, and that drives
It's my
me
favorite.
bonkers.
Yeah.
It's my
Really?
favorite of the X-Men
Oh my
movies.
gosh, it's.
We're now caught up to the September episode because this is what happened.
God.
Mike found out that Brandon really liked
Full
Oh, is that where it was?
Yes,
circle.
yeah.
Oh god! But then we won't talk about.
Then it was
September.
tangenting. But no, I mean, we didn't dig into it.
So
Yeah.
where do you stand, Sparks, on how many X-Men movies?
Because this is your first time like on the podcast.
Look,
talking about
I
it.
think I think that overall I can say like they're fine.
It's what you want in a franchise.
Yeah. I think X-Men 1 is of its time, but good.
I do too.
Mhm.
I think it's good.
As-
still.
as
the-
I think
yeah.
I just
as-
watched it yesterday.
It's totally insane.
It is.
It is.
As the representation of a early 2000s, really filmed in 1999 superhero comic book film that was establishing the genre.
Blade.
I get it.
Yeah.
X2
but Blade
is,
wasn't establishing like a
X2
universe.
is
No,
the
yeah.
better version of that, and also flawed. And X-Men 3 is utter trash.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how I knew, but I hadn't watched it since
X-Men's
theaters.
rough. It gets rough.
Ooh,
really
I hadn't
fast.
watched it since theaters, and I rewatched it. And I'm like, oh boy,
It doesn't even
that
look.
is-
It visually doesn't
that is
even
bad.
look good. Yeah.
Yeah.
X-Men: The Last Stand is really bad.
And I think Days of Future Past is overrated.
Okay.
That's fair.
Okay.
But you're not saying it's bad, so I appreciate that.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm
Yeah.
saying it's overrated.
That's
I
fair.
can understand that. It's kind of like when people claim that when people say Black Panther is overrated. Overrating is
It's
as
a
much-
different term. Yeah.
It's a totally different term. It's as much about your own sensibilities as it is about the quality
Yeah,
of the film.
it specifically comes from I walked out of it going, that was pretty all right. I had a lot of people around me going, that was the best or that was incredible, and I'm like,
Days
I
of
don't
Future
agree.
Past?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's how I always I always relate that to Mad Max Fury Road, where everyone
Sure.
around me was saying that Mad Max Fury Road was the greatest thing in the whole universe,
But
I
I-
walked out being like, okay.
But the difference there,
'cause
you
like
got
Godzilla, you
overhyped.
like bigger.
You got overhyped going into it. I walked out of the movie the week it came out
Oh, I
feeling
see.
that way, and everyone around me was still talking it up. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't see what you see.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
All right.
I think Charles Xavier and Magneto is the best thing about all of these movies.
Really horribly miscast.
Really?
Oh,
You're a big fan of the comics, and you think that
Well,
that's
for-
a good cast for Magneto.
For what we.
Okay,
when none-
in what
no,
world
no,
is that a good
for-
cast for
for
Magneto?
all of
like,
the- for
and
all of the
Xavier,
mistakes.
Xavier's an arrogant, young, handsome, slick. Like we're doing things, and then we have
Yeah.
engage. Oh, I like tea
Yeah,
and
yeah.
philosophy.
But
Like
for
no,
what
you
they're
cast
doing-
Picard. You didn't cast.
There are so many. There are so many.
Start.
There are so many examples, and even in the MCU, where characters are character in name only.
Oh, holy cow.
And so
There's a
like
lot of 'em, yeah.
Xavier and Magneto, I think work really well for the film that they created, that they built around
That's
them.
true.
Again,
That's
it is
true.
it is the first
That's very
X-Men
true.
and setting up their ideologies. Again, there are decades of Xavier being so many different ways, and this is a much more less cool Xavier. That's you get the cool Xavier in First Class.
You get a junkie.
That's Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. Yeah.
The powerhouse of
But
Patrick
you're right,
Stewart,
he does, yeah.
the powerhouse of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen playing off each other is a tantalizing idea, and them in those roles is a cool idea, even if they're not necessarily the perfect actors for it.
I
Though
agree,
at the
yeah.
time probably were.
Yeah.
It nonetheless, I'll still say in all of them that they appear in, they're underutilized.
Yeah.
100%. I don't think either of them are allowed to play enough with each other, nor do I think either of them are allowed to explore their characters enough. Patrick Stewart is basically relegated to a throwaway character in X2. That's a good movie. He's still a throwaway.
Yeah.
One of the problems with Xavier is a problem that the comics fell into.
He's
a
too
lot.
powerful.
He's too powerful. And
Yeah.
you got to get him off the board as quickly as you can, or else what's the point?
Yeah.
He doesn't have a character in X through X3 other than I'm wise.
Yeah, and
Whoa.
that is a problem. But I think that's less of a problem with the films and more of a problem with X-Men in general.
Sure.
And,
God,
and again,
they're
like
bad.
this
I'm sorry,
isn't
see, I'm thinking about
this
that.
isn't the MCU, right? So like again, things are so different. So like they had to do like these kind of boring archetypes to like get us to where we can have again like when Marvel makes the X-Men, like that's the X-Men we're probably going to actually recognize.
What are these archetypes you've been talking about in these movies?
No, well, like they're boring. Like Cyclops is like I'm like the straight edge guy, and then
Is
Storm
he
is the character.
was horribly cast? That's what I mean. Like he's horribly
See,
cast.
that-
Don't even
this-
do that right.
See, now that's what I. That's
No,
what
yeah.
Wolverine's a loner who sucks. He doesn't. He never
That's where-
screws up. He never.
That's
you
where I
know?
agree. That's where I agree with a lot of the complaints about the X-Men films is and the casting of everyone around Wolverine. I love Hugh Jackman. I love Wolverine, but I love that Wolverine. I'm not a comic book X-Men fan.
Yeah, it is a different. It's definitely a different character.
I
that
love
they
I love
create.
that Wolverine.
Yeah.
But I will say that Scott, Jean, even Rogue to an extent after X1,
They're characterless.
they're just cardboard cutouts of a character, not even the characters from the comic, but a character.
Scott's not a character at all.
Yeah.
Honestly, through the 3 films, and I made a note, like the only time James Marsden is allowed to do anything with the character is the one scene in X2 when Jean dies and Logan's holding him back, saying Jean's gone, and James Marsden is losing his shit, and that's the only time he's allowed to act in these
They
movies.
don't
Yeah.
even do his powers right. Like it's a
It's a
I know it's
concussive
lame.
blast.
But this is the lame
No.
thing. It's a concussive blast.
Every movie has a
On the
different
internet, but it's
version.
like, can
Yeah.
we just? This is from a thing. It's like, hey, let's do a Mickey Mouse movie, but he's an alligator. And you're like, no, that's not.
Again,
that's
we
not what
watched,
it's from. No, but we're gonna make him
You
an
know what?
alligator.
You know
It's
what?
fine.
That's a really good example of what I tried to say to you about the oxygen destroyer in Godzilla. It is
Okay.
a thing that is a thing, and you
Like-
turned it into something else.
Yeah, like okay, just have a different character.
It's also
Like-
like from movie to movie. It's just like how hot do we want his beam to be, or do we need him to cut through something? Which is not that's not the
That's
point.
not
of it.
how-
Like again, we watched X-Men Origins Wolverine, where Scott blows through an entire school.
But
It's a blast.
They're writing this.
Yes.
You can just make it up and make it be right. It's not like, oh, we had to change this because we.
I don't think
No,
they-
just
they
make it right.
they
Just
didn't
don't
care
write.
enough.
Don't
No,
write that
that
has
is
to
a-
cut through something.
I think this goes back to what I said in the car. The people who write these X-Men movies, outside of maybe Matthew Vaughn, never really read the comics. They read a comic or two.
So I was telling Ryan that I think we're lucky in a sense of what you do like in the films is there, because most of these films are clearly studio rolling the dice on whatever they really want, and even the few times where Matthew Vaughn or James Mangold have gotten to come in and have a vision that they are clearly expressing, you still feel studio interference in most cases. I think the only one that really truly escaped it is Logan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a like
Even the
perfect
Wolverine has
time
it.
kind of movie.
The Wolverine
Yeah.
does have it. I will to this day defend the third act of the Wolverine as something I enjoy, but it is studio interference to a T.
Uh-huh.
And
Wait,
that's
like
where
when they're fighting Deadpool?
No,
No,
the Silver
no.
Samurai.
The Wolverine.
Oh, sorry.
sorry,
My apologies. My apologies.
the
I was like,
the
oh,
middle
okay.
the middle Wolverine movie.
Like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Up until Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, which Dark Phoenix, if you listen to our Dark Phoenix episode, it was a movie I found to be enjoyable, but it's not great, not good.
Yeah.
But it's enjoyable enough. Outside of before Apocalypse, I only ever said there were 2 bad X-Men movies, and that was the Wolverine Origins and Last Stand.
Well, see, these aren't. Yeah.
And those 2 films are atrocious and hard to watch.
Those are actually bad movies. Like
Well, yes. I mean, I think now I'm going to throw this out there. So when I say there's no good X-Men movies, but we all have these things we like. See, because they have one good scene. All X2, not a good movie, but man, Nightcrawler in the White House.
Dude, Nightcrawler.
Was really
Nightcrawler
cool.
in the White
I
House is
love.
real
I
It
like.
was really good.
Yeah.
And they
Also-
started with it.
Yeah.
Also
oh
hard-
man, when they attacked
Also,
the.
I do think X2 is a good movie.
That's too bad.
That's like X2 is like the one for me where like I think X2 is like the best X-Men movie too. Like the best of what like the X-Men are trying to represent and what they mean. Again, the characters are where are they?
No, but I told you, if you were to, it's an impossible task, but if you were to make a top 10 greatest comic book movies of all time, like objective greatest comic book movies of all time, I do think X2 would be on that list.
Whoa!
I would
top 10.
Yeah,
I would put it maybe like a 10.
Really,
I'd have to really think about
after all this, after all the Marvel
because I don't
arc
think
and everything.
I don't think 70% of the MCU films would even rank in the top 10 of an objective top 10.
What is objective?
This what we just stumbled upon
but that's
is
the
a
thing.
great conversation.
No, but I mean, like, what is
like
objective?
for another.
What is objective?
It's just you take the baseline interests of the entire world. And I'm not saying I know what.
No,
that
I know
is.
you're not. I know you're not. I just don't understand what the definition of objective would be like from filmmaking standards. From like, I don't know what objective is.
I would say an objective opinion would be the baseline opinion that a majority, true 90 to 95% majority of the people hold. That would be to me would be an objective opinion.
X2 has a lot of love.
Yeah,
it has a lot of love.
Cool.
I think the villain is the best villain in the entire
Stryker?
franchise. Yeah, Brian Cox is like so good and so like.
I think he's great. I think Brian Cox really works in that movie. I think Stryker really works in that movie. I think they should have stopped using Stryker after that movie.
If again, like we talked about in the car, if they didn't use him like too many times, if he showed up again in which one you talk about? If he showed up in Days of Future Past,
if he had only shown up in Days of Future Past and not in Origins Wolverine.
See, it's just. I think X2 is its faults are from taking the same tones from the first X-Men movie, which was just started horribly. Like I want Wolverine in his costume, not teased at the end in a deleted scene. Like I want just him in his costume.
Yeah.
I want Cyclops.
I don't
want to see Cyclops' hair. I want the visor. I want him in the blue. Like
I'll be honest with you.
It's so great to have that.
I never wanted to see Hugh Jackman in that costume.
Joe Rogan needs to play the Wolverine. Like you need this short crazed thing.
That's
like Wolverine.
He's not the best actor, but like that's the type.
Wolverine is not a lead character. He's a character in the back that's just like, Gah, meh. In all the comics, he's just, I don't know. Don't worry about it. I'm leaving. And we all love him for that. Not, I have a troubled past, Charles. Can you help me through it? Charles, I don't know. I don't know.
The X-Men movies.
Oh my God, what's happening?
The X-Men movies really, because Bryan Singer really liked Hugh Jackman, really liked Wolverine.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Good. Good. I'm glad they got along to
because of that, the X-Men films quickly dove into the problem that the Marvel Comics fell into in the 90s with Wolverine. That we started to see a lot more Wolverine, and a lot more of his backstory was revealed, and a lot more of what.
Hey, did you guys know Wolverine had a traumatic past?
Never would have guessed.
Yeah, never would have thought of that.
Wouldn't have thought
and so
that.
Killed a few people.
So the movies went hardcore into that, whereas it took the comics like 40 years before they
Origins came out in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Wolverine didn't have an origin until like after the movie came out.
Wolverine Origins existed.
I'm sorry, not Wolverine Origins. I'm sorry, X-Men.
Yes.
But they're teasing this stuff in like X2, and Origins came out in like 2004, 2005. So I'm like, it's a lot of Wolverine, guys.
I don't know. It's weird
lot
that
of
it's so unfortunate that the storylines were always Wolverine's past and not his future, because it's kind of like we were saying before. Where it's like, I know. It's like, oh my God, did they turn the Wolverine into a weapon? Yeah, no, I know they did. I just watched him stab like 30 special ops guys. I know I know this. I know. Oh, they put metal on his skeleton. Yes, I know. I saw it. Like it drives me nuts that they keep like just going in the past and all these things. It's like, can we move forward with storylines?
I want to real quickly. We all don't like X-Men Origins Wolverine. That movie's god awful. I really hate that movie revealed the bone claws, and that movie exists in general, because I feel like the final fight scene in the Wolverine would have a lot more impact if you see his claws get cut off.
Oh yeah,
and then they grow back as bones, and that's the first time we see him with the bone claws.
That would be cool.
I thought that would have been a really cool reveal.
Sure. That was a good reveal in Days of Future Past.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will
When
say
he doesn't have it yet, you're like, oh, see
Yeah.
here. Oh, look here, we're doing
Things
a
are
thing
different.
that's not. Yeah, like
Right.
kind of get
watching. Of all the X-Men movies I had time to watch, I decided to watch X-Men Origins Wolverine because I hate myself. But I still think the opening of that movie, like the first 10-15 minutes, are still okay. Like the montage of him in the wars, the stuff in Vietnam, even up to going to the place with the adamantium.
Yeah.
Like you start to notice
when
like
you have the team,
When
which
you have
I
the
was
team.
we were watching it and I was telling you, I'm like, if the whole movie was about him being part of this team
Oh,
with
right?
Wade Wilson
Right,
and
isn't that interesting?
Sabretooth,
Yeah.
I'd be into this
and
movie.
I was laughing at the Deadpool
Good
jokes. I'm like, of course Ryan Reynolds like this. He loves Deadpool. This is him being Deadpool way before he's
okay,
actually Deadpool.
all the guys are dead.
Yeah,
I want to know who was like, hey, you guys, I have Will.i.am's phone number.
right. Yes.
Okay, listen to me. This
isn't a game,
I
Logan.
can call him up. All right.
It was
you guys,
Fergie.
you guys say the word. I'll call him up. We can get him in this movie.
So bad.
Yes, we can get in this movie. Like
It's,
this is what I mean. Where and I stand by that. I don't like any of these, and all I'm hearing from you guys is like, "Oh, this one, it was really okay." The first, like these aren't ringing.
Hey, but here's the thing. Like,
endorsements.
it's like
It's comfortable. This is it's
okay for some movies to be
it's
just
mac
okay.
and cheese from Red Lobster.
Hey, I love mac and
right?
cheese, man.
Like, and you're like, this is good.
Here's the thing. So, Mike, here's the thing, like-
it's got the cheese and the noodles.
In hindsight,
Red
right,
Lobster?
we're 15, almost 20 years removed. You know, when in 2000 when X-Men came out, like at the time, like that was like revolutionary. Like whoa, it's an X-Men movie. Whoa, 20 years later,
punch of X-Men and Spider-Man
Yeah.
are the only reason why we have the MCU.
yeah.
Yeah.
And now we
Yes.
have the
Oh, yeah, I'll
MCU,
take that. I'll
and
take
we're so lucky to have like actual adaptations that are straight from the comics while being actually good movies too. We like so it's easy. It's like I understand everything you're saying, but like.
Well,
I think
it's
those
not
movies.
necessarily that I think all of us are in agreement on it to an extent. And it's the same thing I said about Captain Marvel. Like your mileage is going to vary on these types of films. If they give you what you're looking for, which is for the most part, a lot of these films gave me what I was looking for. It may not be. They may not be. Although I do think a lot of them are great. Well, good to great. They gave me what I was looking for, and I do really enjoy them for that. But
Yeah.
if they're not giving you what you're looking for, then
Yeah.
you're not going to enjoy them.
Yeah, and so for me, it was just such a hard swing and a miss. I mean, just kind of piggybacking off of what you said with that, you like seeing them through all the wars, like
I like
that
that.
was you saying. It's I like that too, and then but really I don't. And this, but my point is, so the Simpsons, right?
Simpsons did it.
No, the Simpsons. I felt the Simpsons kind of started jumping the shark when McBain, Werner Wolfcastle, turned into Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I liked the facsimile of what they were doing. So, and this is why I didn't like the first X-Men movie. This is a little heavier stuff. It's like it starts with a concentration camp.
Yes.
And I don't know. And while you can do whatever you want, I don't know if it's responsible or even where that's coming from to hang your hat on that. Maybe this was 1999, like pre 9/11 world or what have you, but to have that and then to have we're going to use this machine to turn all the senators into mute. Like it's like wait,
It is
where
totally
are we?
all over
Like,
the place. Yeah.
Wait, Magneto's the bad guy. What are you telling me? Like what's happening? We're not even we're kind of exploring this trauma.
I think
but to kick off with that, not to
Yeah.
to have it a line, to have it a whispered backstory amongst fans, to
Sure.
have it be something where it's like alluded to through Charles and of course I guess I could see where, but to have that to have it there to show us this. And then it's like, oh, I don't know, you guys. This is, and then that tone is carried through, everything.
I think the Holocaust thing is actually better handled in First Class.
I think so too.
Because in First Class, I think there is a more important through line to Eric's relationship to
Sebastian Shaw.
Sebastian
Yeah,
Shaw,
yeah.
and the fact that he is actively hunting Nazis. I think there's a more important through line to the character of Eric because of the Holocaust. I think it's more built into the film.
I agree if you took out them there.
Mm-hmm.
If he was hunting Nazis, I would. Then for me, this is for me, of course.
yeah.
Everyone love whatever you want. That's not what I'm doing.
Sure.
That because everyone always says, well, it should have been Magneto Nazi hunter. Well, I love. Oh man, when he's Magneto, but the child and the mother and the mutant powers, it's like what? This is blurry and muddy, and I don't like it.
So
Again,
really like Sebastian Shaw's German accent for some reason.
that's what I mean. To go from like the quarter scene and stuff, and his mom being murdered, and he's in a concentration camp and hunting Nazis to Jennifer Lawrence.
Your
We should all-
name's
we should
Magneto.
all have code names. You're Eric.
That is
but
what I
you're-
agree with.
You do
Yeah.
magnets. You're Magneto. I was in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Can you not call me Magneto, please?
Right.
Like, do you have
Yeah.
any idea what you're even talking to me about, Jennifer Lawrence?
I actually think that
No, I don't. I can change skin, and it's uncomfortable
Funny
for
enough,
me
Mike,
to be
I
in
think-
society. Like, whoa, let's slow down
I
what
think
we're
the
talking
tonal
about.
shifts are actually bigger in First Class because it does have a lighter tone than the original X-Men.
That's
and
that's my problem with that movie.
Yeah,
And I-
your name's Magneto.
Yeah,
I'm
like what?
And
did
I
you
think
start
Yeah.
with?
there is an amount of like irresponsibility in relation to the allegory you are trying to draw from, especially
Tricky.
in
It's
First
very
Class,
tricky.
is guilty of it because you and I were talking about in the car that they make the two diverse characters of the team either change sides or die in the exact same moment.
Yeah.
And turn it into an
Tricky.
all white / blue cast.
Yeah. And
Yes.
it's so when I brought up Deadpool earlier, that's why I like the facsimile works when you're trying to do these heavy things. In the Deadpool, there's that prison that's a mutant prison. Like they're all in. Like it's like, oh, okay, like the orphanage. Like, oh, okay, these are things that I can allude to, and it works within this world, and I don't have to be like, oh yeah, 9/11. You guys remember 9/11? 9/11 was horrible. Now an X-Men story.
So-
like, holy shit, you guys.
I see what you mean, yeah.
My largest problem with the X-Men films overall, and the reason why I like the show The Gifted so much in season 1, or why I like the ones like Logan, is that in a lot of the X-Men films, the setting is political disarray over mutants versus humans. The context is not about that. The context is not exploring that concept ever. Not actually.
That's why I
not
like
in any
X2.
relation where it's actually the characters going toe-to-toe about it. That's not
Yeah.
a
Because
part
it's
of it.
always again why I like House of X. It's always ends up being mutants versus mutants.
Yes.
That's why I like X2. It is actually like they have to kind of combine forces.
Yeah,
That's why I
like-
like X2 a lot.
Yeah.
And there's never, I don't know, these movies never do anything clever. It's just who can punch harder.
Yeah.
It's just who shows up. It's
Sure.
there's no creative problem solving. Like in the early X-Men comics, it's all really interesting. While cheesy, creative problem solving. And there's mystery.
But the bummer is that like the X-Men films still hold that as like the major overtone setting of everything is
Yeah.
humans versus mutants, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
But X2, while good, isolates it as it's this one dude who has a mutant vendetta. It's not all humans because he tricks all the humans into agreeing with him. That's the story.
Yeah.
He tricks all the humans into saying, you're
'Cause-
right,
yeah.
mutants are bad. He sets it up, and so it's like, no, humans are bad. It's still not
interesting.
actually going into its concept of like, what if on the ground humans and mutants don't agree? Which is what The Gifted did really well.
Again, it's the fundamental core of the X-Men from the comics, but like they don't explore it at all.
Well, the
so that's
X-
why they need to change. I think.
Well, going back to
basically.
what I was saying, and Kevin Feige's, we can take his words for face value if we want to or not, but he says we're not going to do the same thing as they did before, and we know he has an almost allergic reaction to doing stuff that has been done before.
Sure.
But when the X-Men films started, they were done by a guy. Same thing with J.J. Abrams who did Star Trek 09. These are people who've not read these books. These are people who are not entrenched in this
They were hired to
property.
make a movie.
They were hired to make a movie. And because they kept going back to Singer, especially because he came back for Days of Future Past and Apocalypse, they could never get away from Singer. They could never break that mold. And then Simon Kinberg stayed on board as creative producer, and he was also in the same way. You could never do anything more interesting because they never had the idea to, because they never read anything new.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing there that really gets me is that regardless of reading the comics or not, your setting, you are in a sense, in many ways, the setting is a political discussion that the films are supposed to be having, but they don't do the character work to explore it. The Wolverine's really good to me because it is a character exploration piece about a guy dealing with the fact that he murdered somebody he loved. Regardless of the fact that I don't like X3 that much, and that didn't leave much impact with me, he is haunted by the fact that he had to go and do that, and it's all of his life finally catching up with him, and he's like, I need to step the heck away, and then he gets pulled into this other thing
I
in
agree
Japan, and
about-
he's processing through
I
it.
completely agree with that.
That's a character piece. Logan, we also love. Character piece. It's focused on that. X3 doesn't work for me because Jean isn't a character.
Oh,
That's
no.
why that's so
Oh,
bad.
it's like
She's-
it's such a disservice to
she's
Famke Jensen.
she's a tool for the script and everything.
Yeah.
That's all of it. X-Men Days of Future Past, the reason why I find that overrated is because by the end of it, it is mutants versus mutants, just like you said, Ryan.
And there's a Bryan
They-
Singer cameo that's
they-
just the worst.
There is?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're
I
like,
missed
okay,
that.
you're not Alfred Hitchcock. Relax.
You're not M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah.
Yeah, they throw out the whole what could have been interesting about the discussion of humans versus mutants still again becomes it's this one guy's vendetta. He's using this one incident to push it. It's not about what's happening in between the characters' interactions. Why is this so personal to them? This is why, controversial thing, one of my favorite scenes in all of the X-Men films is from X-Men Apocalypse. and it's the scene where Magneto is running through the woods with his wife and his child.
That's a great scene.
Because the people who he worked with have found out he's a mutant and they're hunting him down. But at the same time, when they get there, they don't immediately open fire because they're conflicted. That is human conflict about
that's a good. See what I'm talking about? How that's so much better metaphorically than just hitting more being people, our friends. Yes.
And so, like, the guy is there and he's saying, "Don't do this." You know, like, we just want to bring you in. Like, don't make us shoot. And one guy shoots, and it goes wrong, and all of them are upset that they hit the daughter, and not Magneto. All of them are upset about it, and that kind of tearing at you, like, I don't want mutants, but this guy's worked with me. He saved one of our lives. He's our friend. That's one of my favorite scenes in all the X-Men films because that's what this whole oversetting that they want of political disarray should be showing.
That's why The Gifted, like you mentioned, is so good. Because it has humans working with mutants, mutants against mutants.
Season 1 of The Gifted.
Yeah. Season 1,
So, like, I mean, to your point, that's brilliant and chilling, and it's one good scene.
Oh yeah, no.
That's all unfortunately,
I don't like that movie, but I love that scene.
I love that scene.
I want to talk about real quick a character that I think is the only one of the only really good translations, and then turns into the worst translation. I want to talk about Mystique because in the original X-Men movies, Mystique's awesome, and Mystique is a badass.
Oh my gosh!
And I really like, again, in X3, a bad movie. The second Mystique turns human, Eric leaves her.
That was so awful.
Because that's what he would do.
Not only that, what I don't like about it is that Mystique decides because Eric left me because I was cured
to turn.
I will throw everything I ever believed in the cause under the bus.
They even say the worst thing. Never, hell hath no fury, like a woman's
yeah,
You're like,
that's
Jesus,
bad.
you guys.
That's bad.
That is bad, but I think Ryan's right. It's a really good moment that Eric just like, well, you're human. Screw you.
Deuces.
That I was fine with.
Also, he walks away. He's like, such a shame. She was so beautiful.
Yeah.
But actually, Ryan, because you and I watched X-Men, the first X-Men film last night.
We did.
After we were done watching Raiders, and as I was watching the first X-Men movie, I'm like, damn, Mystique is a effing badass in X1 and X2. Because in my memories, I have a lot of memories of the newer X-Men films: First Class, Days of Future Past,
They're the newer
Apocalypse,
ones,
Dark Phoenix.
I do not think Jennifer Lawrence has been a good Mystique.
No,
She's
what's she good in? Name the movie she's good in.
Winter's Bone. She won an Oscar for it.
She won an Oscar for Winter's Bone.
That's like the first movie that she got famous for.
Oh, that sucks.
I think so. I think Mystique, interestingly enough, I think the direction they went with Mystique in First Class is a good starting point. But because between First Class and Days of Future Past, her star power grew so large, they gave her a larger point. I think Days of Future Past is where that starts to falter.
Yeah. Even in
it's worse in Days.
Even in another show, not the original cartoon, X-Men Evolution. Do you guys remember that?
Hell
TV
yeah,
show?
I do.
So,
yeah,
I
like that.
Mystique was the principal, and she was a hard ass.
Yeah.
She was always a badass in that show, but she was also like, you do it. I mean, because all the kids, they didn't know that she was their principal. So, and even in these movies, Mystique is like, Mystique for me, in the X1 and X2, she is like top tier X-Men character. She hardly speaks. Like, I will always remember the scene in X2 where she lulls that guy, that security officer.
Yes,
with the iron. Yeah,
she knocks him out and injects the iron because she's like,
it was X2,
Oh, the breakout
right?
sequence in
Yeah.
X2 is real good too.
so good.
Right?
You should have killed me when the chance, Charles.
There's too much
But-
iron in your blood.
Yeah. Like, I had a point. But yeah, they kind of
Mystique's cool.
bastardized Mystique in, they kind of bastardized her in the later X-Men films.
I'm just saying she shouldn't be like a leader of the X-Men. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Has she ever joined the X-Men in the comics or no?
She does much like a Sabretooth, like an anti-hero, anti-villain thing, but she's not a hero character.
Because obviously
whatsoever.
Magneto joins the X-Men
She
eventually.
is mutant and proud forever.
Yeah.
So, touching on that, X2, one of the weirdest scenes, always been weird to me, doesn't work for me. Mystique going into Logan's tent.
Oh, right. And she's like, you want to bang Famke Jensen? How about Cyclops?
Yeah.
How about
Storm?
How about Charles? How about Storm? How about this inanimate
And the
carbon rod?
the reason it bothers me so much is because
How about yourself?
it contextually only exists in that scene. There's no setup to it prior to that scene. There's no ramifications or exploration of it for either of the characters past that scene.
yeah.
It's just super strange.
These movies aren't...
I don't get it.
I'm not sure.
I don't get
not
it.
to get into it, but these movies aren't terribly kind to women.
No, they aren't.
Like,
No.
holy cow.
Oh,
Like,
God.
holy cow.
So-
They never ever dive into the idea that Nightcrawler is Mystique's.
That's yeah.
But
But
like-
they
but they
don't talk
bring-
about Juggernaut and Xavier being related.
But they
No.
bring in Azazel
Well,
in First
but
Class.
later on.
Wait, it's his... I mean,
Stepbrother.
well, yeah, but so okay, yeah.
In
It is a stepbrother,
in First
yeah.
Class, they bring in Azazel, and I thought that was their way of saying, "Hey, this is Azazel and Mystique. They make Nightcrawler."
No,
Nope.
they didn't
Nope.
care. They don't care.
No,
Yeah.
they just
You guys
wanted
give
another
way too much credit.
Nightcrawler.
Yeah, they didn't care.
Yeah, but going back what you said, Mike, about how they're not too afraid of women. When I was growing up, Storm was besides Wolverine, Storm was my favorite X-woman.
Talk
or
about a
X-Men.
disservice to a character.
Oh God, it's been years since I last saw X-Men. Watching X-Men last night, Ryan pointed out, "Is like, hey, has Storm said anything yet?" It wasn't until like halfway through the movie and the scene with the Senator Kelly on the slab where she finally has.
She just always shows up halfway in frame, like, "Don't forget I'm here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Halle Berry.
Lightning.
And one of my favorite parts about Days of Future Past was Halle Berry coming back as Storm. But then we get Apocalypse, and Storm's part of the Four Horsemen. I'm like, no.
They
Right.
just
Why?
hate everything.
Yeah. So I told the guys about this in the car. There is a graphic novel adaptation of the X-Men film.
Right.
The 2001.
Oh,
No,
God.
so
We
here's
are in
what's,
a post-postmodern
here's what's
world.
interesting, though. That graphic novel adaptation came out the same time as the film, so it's based off the original version of the script. In the graphic novel, when they're doing the opening, they do an exploration of Storm in Africa when she's young, at the same time that they're doing
That's
the
amazing.
stuff right after Eric's stuff in the Holocaust. They do it to build up 3 different narratives, and then it goes to Jean telling the story of different mutants and what they've gone through in the world at the press conference we see at the beginning, or the meeting that's
Yeah.
happening,
At the
and
UN
then
or
and then
something.
later on in the film, or sorry, in the graphic novel version of that's based off the script, there's a whole section where it's Jean and Scott having a conversation about Logan. It's focused on their relationship and what this means. They are isolated in a room without him, and Storm also comes in to kind of make a case for why he's important. Also an interesting thing in this graphic novel, I just went through it like real quick, picking out the pieces that didn't look familiar, didn't look like they came out from the movie, because I'm like, oh, characters who don't speak are speaking. And there's a part where they have the theory of like Magneto must want him for something. They think that Magneto wants Logan for his adamantium, that they want that he wants to utilize the adamantium in his bones
It's
for
rogue.
something, and because they're trying to figure it out. And I'm just like, there's interesting ideas here that just never made it to the film.
Yeah.
To like explain why they were doing things in character
I like how
development.
you're explaining how there was interesting things that they just didn't put in the film.
But that's my
This is really good. Do you want to put it in the film? Nah,
my
get rid of
point
it.
my point
Yeah,
being
yeah.
like studio interference. How much did the studio take away from what might have been a more engaging X-Men
Probably all of
property?
it.
And in all cases, I think this happens.
Yeah, you know what? I question the idea back then of how much was studio, because
Yes.
a lot of it just there wasn't as much studio interference as we've seen with franchises as we've
plain
seen
old
now.
incompetence.
They
Just
actually-
classic
yeah, just
incompetence.
like-
I do think it's just classic incompetence, because
Sure.
we see a lot of studio interference now because they want to build, say, franchises, make billions.
They need to
of
make
dollars.
billions. Yeah.
But back then, that wasn't necessarily the case. When X-Men was coming out, they were just like, well, it's a comic book. Comic books do okay.
The biggest thing that I think the studios were guilty of with the X-Men films is knowingly wanting to build a franchise out of it, yet never
Having a
following
plan?
through on pieces.
Yeah.
They'd
Yeah.
set up a next thing and then they'd completely pivot and ignore what they'd set up before in order to go down a different avenue because they thought it would be edgier or better or whatever it was at the time that they decided to make that
By the
choice.
time they decided to franchise X-Men, like I'm talking about after Last Stand, which
Sure.
we talked about, like Last Stand and the 1-2 punch of Last Stand and Origins would have killed any other franchise.
Sure.
But the fact that it didn't, and they realized that they want a franchise in the same way that the Marvel Studios was franchising, like they wanted a franchise. By that point, that's when I feel like the sins are as egregious as what we're saying. Like they
The
just-
decade plan starts.
the plan of like, well, franchise it, I guess.
Yeah.
And then that's just been
But the thing,
mantra.
and the thing is, like, once they started to franchise it, it's not like they have a Kevin Feige. It's like I made the comparison to you guys.
They have a Brian Singer.
They have a,
Not even.
They have a
he
Simon
leaves too.
Kinberg.
They have a Simon Kinberg. But even like, I lost it. Just kidding.
No,
I had a
you
good
were going to
thought.
say that it's like a
Oh,
6-issue series
yes.
where each issue was written by a different writer. And it's just like, hey, your issue is going to be like the Dark Phoenix thing, and it's like, cool. I'll set up the Dark Phoenix in space introduction thing. Wait, what do you mean you teased Dark Phoenix at the end of the last movie? I didn't write for that.
Yeah,
That's
what
what
it
it's
feels
like.
like.
That's
So like a
interesting.
bad handoff, like a bad Olympic handoff.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible does it better.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
sure it
those,
does.
boy, did those movies get good.
Hell yeah.
Wow.
Let's just
The
turn
last
this.
one, my jaw was dropped in the theater. And I was like, these have always been good, but how are they
How
getting better
Every time.
Like I'm like, that was such a good movie.
Hell yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Oh, sorry, we're getting off of X-Men and starting talking about good movies. My apologies.
I
Let's,
could talk about
let's-
Mission Impossible all day. Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the Mission Impossible.
Okay, I need to leave then because I haven't seen any of the films. So
When you brought up, when you brought up how
oh shush, you knew that.
I forgot. When you brought up how women are mistreated so poorly, I thought of something that just stood out so hard to me, and it's part of a bigger issue I've talked about with the X-Men films before. In X-Men 3, there is one character who's part of this new leather-wearing goth, lots of tattoos because that's how they show that they're mutants, group who joined the Brotherhood. I really hate that. That's something that Bryan Singer brought to the table a lot from X-Men 3 and on. Whenever the New Mutants came in, they were just their identity is their power. They have no character outside of it, and their look is black and
Days of Future
gothic
Past
and
has
lots
that.
of tattoos.
Yeah.
Lots of tattoos.
They're
Days of
freaks.
Future Past,
They're others.
Apocalypse.
They're
and
trying to.
So there's one where there's a female who is very much set up to be trans in appearance,
Yes.
and it's very much designated as other, and she's a bad guy. And I'm like, this is really not okay.
So one of the things, sorry, Ben, real quick. So one of the things that reminds me of is Transformers. We talked a little bit about the Transformers films, how Michael Bay obviously doesn't know anything about the Transformers franchise. He will just kind of be like, okay, you're blah blah blah, you're blah blah blah, and they show no characteristics of the namesake that they are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
X-Men has a similar thing. For example, in X3, the guy who has spikes that come out of his body for whatever reason.
Spike?
Yeah. No,
Not Spike.
that's not Spike.
Isn't Spike in Evolution? I'm sorry.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was
Yeah.
just about to say.
What's his name
but-
then?
So he shares a name with a character in the comics. I'm sorry, I didn't look it up beforehand. I just remember seeing this.
Mm-hmm.
He does share a name with a character whose mutant power is manipulate fire.
Oh,
So the
Pyro?
no.
Pyro's in that movie.
There are
Yeah.
other mutants that do that.
Oh.
So because what Bryan Singer was like, okay, you're blah blah blah, you're blah blah blah, you're blah blah blah. Like he just kind of throws names at actors, and then
Sure.
they just kind of give them. They have like a power generator, and if you get lucky,
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things I want to talk about is how a lot, especially the later films, how the X-Men franchise has disappointed me with unfortunately my expectations. When I first saw X2 and when I saw Jean Grey's eyes go red, I'm thinking, oh crap, they're doing the Phoenix next movie. We're getting the Phoenix, and I was really excited
you weren't wrong.
yeah, but I was
showed
excited.
a
I was
Phoenix.
excited for the Phoenix. And then my dad and my brother, we have no idea what that is. I'm like, oh, I read this one X-Men book. I know what that is. And then I was also watching Evolution at the time. And Spike was a character I really liked. And once I saw the trailers for X3, I saw a dude with spikes.
That looks like Spike?
Yeah.
Guys.
I thought, holy shit, it's Spike.
Spike.
We just read Wolverine and the X-Men. That Spike
Yeah.
kid is supposed to be Kid Omega.
What?
Kid Omega is Quentin Quire, who's a telepath.
Oh, is that what it was? It was telepath.
Oh,
That's
even-
the furthest. Because
Wow.
we just read an X-Men comic with Quentin Quire,
Okay.
Kid Omega,
Yeah.
who is a Charles Xavier character type. Not a spiky character.
So
That-
so that's what I
What?
was telling you is that they kind of throw
That's
names.
the-
but also,
that's awful.
But what I was going for was how disappointed I was because they were setting up something, or they were showing me something that I linked to other media, be it comics or be it books or be it the television show. And I'm like, oh, they're bringing in this character I really like, name only or empower only, and then they screw it up. Another big
Yeah, right?
Ben-
before you before
No,
let
but
me-
I want to give you help here. I'm sorry.
The help's gone.
Oh my
Totally
gosh.
lost it.
You just,
Damn,
you just
dog.
want to
I
take him
feel
out
like-
at the knees.
I
Sorry,
was
but-
coming in for. I was coming in to back you up.
Can I
The
finish?
assist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not only that, another disappointing thing that really gets me, especially with the newer X-Men films, comes at the end of Apocalypse. It's where we see the classic costumes for the X-Men. We see
right.
Mystique in her
Oh, at the
classic
very
white. We see Cyclops in his classic costume.
are
We
good
see them
costumes.
all in their costumes that we know and love.
They look good.
Dark Phoenix, lame.
Bye.
I'm sorry, but those costumes suck.
Look,
I
they're
hate
still, they were still comic accurate. I will always go back to
That
the
is
fact they
fine.
are comic accurate.
I don't
comic
know. It's
accurate,
like-
fine.
It's like making the One Ring a bracelet.
yeah.
You're like, yeah, it's jewelry, right?
What
Like,
about-
no, this is really important.
But yes, Brandon, they are comic accurate. Points for that. But at the same time, they suck and I hate them.
So what I was going to say,
put.
one of the things. So the Phoenix Saga, The Last Stand specifically, turned
Blah.
Dark Phoenix into
Scarlet
Scarlet
Witch.
Witch.
Yeah.
It's something I've always said.
Oh,
It
okay,
is something-
yeah.
it's something I noticed the
wow, I
last-
didn't even put that together.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
It is. I noticed it last time I watched one of the
No,
times
you're
I watched-
100% correct.
Like 10,000% correct.
They,
Yeah.
man.
It's the same outfit, same
Yeah.
color scheme, same power set. They turn the Dark Phoenix into Scarlet Witch, and you see it because it was with Magneto. Like for whatever reason, they were like, "Well, I guess we don't really need a Scarlet Witch. We have this thing."
Do you think it was originally written for a Scarlet Witch, or
don't think so.
like it was dusted off or something and retrofitted? Because that's interesting.
So here's the thing. So
that's interesting, right? Because that fits way too
House
well.
of M came out in like the earlier before this movie, where Scarlet Witch did No More Mutants and stuff, right? So she's a very prominent character at this time. I wouldn't be surprised. Like Jean's the main focus, but like I wouldn't be surprised if like they tried to work that in.
It is 100% deliberate because you don't do that if you're not doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
But I don't know why that is. It doesn't make any sense for it to be Scarlet Witch, but it's meant to be her. If for whatever reason they just kind of like Scarlet Witch there, Dark Phoenix there.
And again, I the idea, because Magneto is the one who pushes Scarlet Witch to create the House of M, which is the House of Magnus, where he's the leader of the world, basically. So like him taking Jean as like an apprentice seems very Scarlet Witchy. So, like, I actually wouldn't be shocked if we're like, oh, no, that needs to be Jean Grey. We set her up in the last movie. Oh, she's dead? Bring her back to life. Make her the Phoenix.
Yeah.
What? Just do it. It's fine.
Maybe, yeah.
Simon Kingbird loves it.
I definitely have a few more things I want to go into, but we're nearing an end of our 10-minute time with Mike. So I want Mike to jump in with anything he has left he wants to say in this.
Oh my gosh, you're so kind. Okay, well I'll just go down my notes.
Sounds good.
How about we do the Mike's X-Men notes?
Yes,
okay?
Here we go.
And so some stuff will be reiterated.
We'll respond and react,
it will
and you can listen to it later.
saying.
Yeah.
Brian Singer is a monster. That's the first
That's
thing.
true.
100%.
True
I'm
story.
just like, oh great. Concentration camp question mark. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because the tone is just completely wrong from the start. I have Hugh Jackman miscast, but we like totally overwent that.
Yeah. Jackman is miscast.
Hugh Jackman.
I know people lean into this, but the weird social commentary I always thought was completely misguided and unnecessary. It's like they always say like, well, the X-Men were about Martin Luther King and Malcolm, and I'm always like, is that true? And people say it is, and I didn't live through that time, but like the more I learn and read about everything in the world, I'm like, I hope not. Like that's crazy.
Sure.
But if that's an allegory that you need during the time, fine, I get
Yes.
it. I couldn't, but then we get into like gay rights and now women's rights, and it's like I don't think the X-Men needs to always represent an underclass.
That's why I'm saying they felt stagnant for the last couple decades.
It's fascinating because like it's always it's if the allegory is like, are mutants dangerous, and we're supposed to be like, no, and it's like, well, I just watched one shoot knives out of its knuckles and killed 30 people, and it's hammered, just drunk. You're like how are we, like, it's not a good, like, what about that one pulled all the iron out of a guy's blood and he was flying around. No, they're really good people. Oh, that guy stopped a city and erased all his memories. Like everything they do is a horror film.
Yeah.
And then the movie's like, but they're really great.
Yeah.
They're people too. Like,
Right.
No. Like you're writing it wrong to do these metaphors.
To do this idea.
It's very bothersome.
It's
to
like,
me.
hey, what? A guy just came to Baltimore, lifted an entire freaking baseball
this is what I mean.
stadium, and dropped it on the White House.
And then he walks out and he's like, "Hey, Nixon, we're not that bad."
Guys,
You guys,
I
come
can't
on,
even
what
get
do we-
started on Magneto, the war crime terrorist, just getting free reign after every movie. Just like, no, it's fine. He's a good guy now. I'm like, guys, he's killed hundreds of thousands of people. Come on.
You know what I
It's
kinda-
it's not well written.
Yeah.
Isn't it in Days of Future Past where Magneto tells Charles that JFK was a mutant?
Yes, and he saved his life.
Yeah.
Or he tried
Or
to
he tried to save his life.
This is what I mean. Where it's like, can we not have these references? Like I need the facsimile, and I was like, oh, you guys, Magneto saved JFK. You're like, okay, all right. What was JFK's
That-
superpower?
you know what that
He,
feels like to me?
Irresistible to women. Like, shut up. Like, shut up. Like, I don't know.
That's hilarious.
We have things. Oh, I put a little things I like.
Heck yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
Is it more than one?
There's two things.
Heck yeah.
I literally wrote down things I like. Famke Jensen.
Yeah.
That Nightcrawler scene. Those are the two things. I'm like,
Dude, you know what? That
Mike
Nightcrawler
was
scene
in
is
ninth
incredible.
grade in 1999. Was like,
I'll even go past Nightcrawler's scene and go into just all of Nightcrawler and the message of him having faith in the world and himself, which is something that they tried, not that they executed perfectly
Yes.
throughout the film.
Okay,
but this
thank you. You saw me looking at you.
I
I'm
did.
like,
But this
all right.
but this idea of him having to like reestablish faith in what mutants can be, what
Yeah.
mutants are, because he sees himself as a lone monster.
And again, I like that scene between him and Mystique in X2, where he's like, "You could be anyone you want. Why wouldn't you want to hide yourself?"
Yeah.
She's like, "Because I shouldn't have to." And they don't do enough of that.
that could go either way. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
You mean, because I always say like best advice is always like, hey, be yourself. And I'm always like, no, yourself kind of sucks. Be
Yeah.
better than yourself.
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't crap my diaper anymore.
Depends
You
on
want to know
how
why?
confident you
Because I
are.
grew as a person.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Wait, you don't?
No, I don't. See, this is
Oh,
but,
shit.
But you know what I mean? Like people, like no, don't be yourself. Be better than yourself. You know,
Yeah.
like it's not. Don't have low self-esteem.
Sure.
You know, but always strive to be better. That's what things are about. That's what hero arcs are about. It's not like Luke, you're a great moisture farmer.
Never.
You should just be that.
You
never
want
do
you
that.
want the movie that has Magneto say, "Well, we are better than them because we have powers," and it's like, yeah, but are you a better person, Eric?
Thank you. Yeah,
Are you a better person?
And he's like, yeah, no, I killed everybody. Right? That's what
Yeah.
you're supposed to do.
I destroyed Auschwitz, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what I mean. Where it's like, I don't need that.
Hey, I kill a Nazi.
Apocalypse, the Auschwitz scene was looking like
Apocalypse,
Little
the,
much.
Little
most
much.
of the movie was a little much.
Big yikes.
Okay, then I have. I have. They back in the day, back in the comics, I always loved like the earlier stuff. It was always fascinating. While cheesy, they use their powers to solve problems.
Yeah.
It was. They never fought each other in the Juggernaut. When they introduced the Juggernauts, like X-Men, like 18 or something. There's something's coming. There's no mystery. Comics always mystery. Something's coming. This force is coming. Xavier is scared, so the kids are like, "Oh, whoa, holy cow!" Right? And they set traps. They go, "We have to fortify this." And Cyclops uses his beams to dig holes. And Iceman They're not fighting each other. I can use this to do something more efficient and faster.
They're being clever.
What a superpower needs to be. And I always like that more than just. What if we do it all at once, you guys? What if we all hit him with, and he's like, oh, it's I don't know, it's like a gymnast just working at as a fry cook. You're like, what? No,
Yeah.
we're using you horribly wrong.
Again, in X2, it's one of the scenes in the mansion where Bobby builds a giant ice wall to
you're like,
stop, and it's just one little
yeah.
thing. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
He's using it not to just
Not to just punch someone. Yeah.
And then I said they need to be more like a Guardians of the Galaxy or an ensemble movie where we get a little bit of everybody.
100%
agree.
There's
There shouldn't be a
not
focus.
wacky, but just like, oh, I see where we have all our backstories.
Yes.
This is why you guys are together. We're moving forward to this goal. They need their real costumes with an exclamation point.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I'm going to leave you guys with something. I was thinking about this the other day because I'm reading a lot of Fantastic Four right now.
Hell yes, baby.
So much fun, and I realized that Breaking Bad is the best Fantastic Four story ever told.
Please explain this to me.
I wrote down two things.
Okay.
And then you guys what? And then I wrote down. Then I thought. And then someone was like, "No, The Incredibles is the best X-Men." And I was like, "Oh no! Oh no!
Fantastic Four.
I said, "No, Incredibles is the best X-Men movie ever made." And like, what? So I'm going to read you two. You're putting your hand up to your face. You don't agree?
I'm so confused.
Okay, I'm going to read two little statements to me, and you tell me which it sounds like more.
Okay.
The Incredibles or Breaking Bad. Okay.
Oh God, here we go.
Okay. A brilliant scientist pushes away his wife and family with narcissistic scientific pursuits that cause his partner to turn into a monster.
Oh crap!
That's Breaking Bad.
That's
a
Fantastic Four.
Okay, I'm going to read another sentence to you. Okay.
Wait, are we supposed to say which?
No, it's just
Yeah.
You give it a say. Okay. A small group of superpowered humans and kids must hide from the government and the law because of unfavorable opinions from citizens they are trying to protect.
X-Men or Incredibles? Yeah.
There you go.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
See, the Incredibles does get that family aspect, but like the
Yeah, but so
idea-
that's what everyone always says. The
Yeah.
Incredibles is you guys is a family. Fantastic Four,
Yeah.
Right.
they're related. You guys, it's like are you.
Yeah.
No, people are related. No, you guys, it's the Incredibles. So it's
Fantastic
Fantastic
not
Four.
related to either one of them.
There's 4 Incredibles, you guys.
Yeah.
There's a Fantastic Four.
All of the X-Men is supposed to be a family.
Yeah.
We're winding down on your
Yes.
time.
Yes.
I'm gonna say one thing that I want to know where your stance is on this.
I also want to ask him something.
Something
after,
We're
yeah.
in flex time, which
so
is
something
fine.
Yeah.
something I really did appreciate in X-Men First Class when I was watching it this go around is I realized that's the one time in all these movies we watch Xavier teach mutants to control and use their powers.
Right?
How is that the only movie that happens in?
Yeah.
What movie was
Yeah.
it again?
First Class.
First Class.
Oh yeah.
And they blows up his favorite tree.
How is that not something more utilized? And then I realized
they
that in
don't
all
care.
of the other films, not only that, nobody teaches the kids how to control and use their powers or be responsible with them. They treat it like they're actually just in a normal school.
Yes.
And they happen to have powers. I'm like, wow, we are really
Yeah.
missing the whole point of this.
And it's the most important plot point in The Incredibles. Is the parents teaching the
Yes,
kids,
to be
listen, these
responsible.
guys are bad guys. It's not like the movies. You need to do this. You need to do
I'm-
it's
it's always shocking to me that like the X-Men like are in the comics it's different, but like in all these movies they're at the mansion, they're at a school, and there's never any school going on. It's like watching Twin Peaks and all the high school kids.
Oh, right.
There is real school.
There's normal school.
There's normal school,
but nobody's
going on.
teaching them to like
Yeah.
be responsible with your
Because
powers.
we see
Here's
them.
how.
We see kids in classrooms all the time,
Yes.
but they're learning math and astronomy and
making fireballs behind
What
their
are you
backs
doing?
in class and getting it frozen by the ice.
Because
line.
remember, they're mutants. Audience, these are mutants.
What was the one you want to talk about?
I just want to ask you a question because I love all your ideals and what you think about the movie and stuff. I want to ask you something about the comics. So
Make an X-Men print.
I did a book called Wolverine and the X-Men, and it's about Wolverine opening up in a new school where he becomes a new Charles Xavier.
I'm sorry, you made this or read this?
I read this. It was one of the book clubs.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay,
I speak
yes.
really fast. I'm trying to be fast.
I got it.
Cyclops becomes a new Magneto, and Wolverine opens up a new school. Right?
Got it.
They had a fundamental falling out. And this is something that's that I love about this run of the comics. It's where Cyclops is like, listen, we were raised to be soldiers from day one. Like there's this evil sentinel coming to kill all of us. All of these children here, they are now soldiers. And Wolverine's like, that is not what we're here about. We are supposed to protect them from the future. We are supposed to be the soldiers, not them.
It's very interesting.
Do you like? Is that a cool idea?
I think that's
for you?
very interesting.
Okay.
Don't you think?
I do
I
too.
mean,
I
it's our
love
place
it.
as an adult. I'm in my 30s right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, and all of a sudden I woke up one day and I was like, oh, I'm the adult in the room.
Yeah.
like if there's a baby,
It's me.
I have to pick it up.
Yeah.
Like I can't hand it to anyone.
Yeah.
That's my for the next
I don't
20
want
years,
this.
like the next 25 to 30 years, it's me.
Yeah.
And then the next generation will take it. And so now I've been really thinking about that responsibility and what that means.
So-
especially to society, like I need to be going out and changing my environment and
Yeah.
doing good. I think that's a big problem
So I
nowadays.
ask you here, you have this giant, this 100-foot sentinel coming to kill everyone on this island, and Cyclops is like, I don't care if you're 5 or 50, you are fighting this with us.
Uh-huh.
Where do you stand on that?
Where do I stand? Well, it's interesting. There's two different ideologies, and it's kind of almost history. History has influenced that. So there's like the Japanese culture. Obviously, you see that in a lot of anime where it's the same thing, where it's like children are soldiers,
Yes.
and it's based upon
Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Yeah,
Battle Royale, baby.
Yeah, it's based on kind of their background with losing some wars and how that works, and then the West ideology of we would like our kids to be better off than we were, and you know what? I love exploring that. I don't know if I have an answer. I could, and I think that's why it's wonderful.
I think because I thought that was a interesting idea that you might appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, like it honestly, it's when do we lose our innocence?
Yeah.
When do we become adults? I have a Christopher Columbus analogy where it's like
boy.
whenever Christopher Columbus comes around, it's always, did you know he was horrible? Right? And you're like,
Yes,
yeah,
no.
yeah, and it's like, the things and then you read the articles are like, hey, Christopher Columbus Day, he just ransacking things to see, the horrible to win, and then I think about that, and then and then they always say, we're lying to kids in school, right?
Yeah.
We're lying to kids, and that's horrible. And then I think, well, with the things we celebrate about Christopher Columbus are exploration, adventure, right? The New World. Not those. They don't celebrate the horrible things.
Right.
But then the question comes in. Oh, I agree. When should we tell them the truth?
it's almost like what do you tell them about
First-
about dying,
first
or
grade?
Santa, stuff
Kindergarten?
like that. Yeah.
Do you burst into the room and say Christopher Columbus was a horrible person? This is why.
In a
Destroy
weird,
your innocence.
in a weird way, this ties
Yeah.
into the bad egg witches
Yes.
thing we were
Where
talking
do we-
about in
where-
the other episode.
When do we? And so that's a really interesting.
So
is it
you
okay?
have Marvel Unlimited. It's called
Yes.
Schism.
Well, it's interesting.
It's an event where it breaks the X-Men
So now
up.
that we're kind of talking about it, I think teaching a child to be a soldier or teaching a child self-discipline are two very different things.
Right.
So I would probably agree with not the soldier one.
Yeah.
I think that's
Wolverine.
borderline child abuse. And
Yeah,
I think
100%.
everyone kind of.
But if you
understands
read the
that,
X-Men comics from the 60s, they are all children fighting Magneto.
But this was the 60s and there was
kill 'em
Vietnam.
all.
Yeah.
Can you imagine making a comic book in Vietnam?
Yeah.
Everyone's kids were going over
Sure.
there.
Yeah.
Like, and there was no
And
excuse.
that's the stuff I want in these movies.
This is what I mean with the Japanese thing, with their background and what have you, and what they've had to do and stuff. It's these are all just reflections of our times.
It's like we said, the movies never evolved with the times.
The movies
Yeah.
are not like the X-Men.
Yeah,
They
you're
don't
right.
evolve.
They never, and if they do, they just swing and a miss.
Yeah.
You know.
All right, Mike. Well,
Well, thank you guys so
We'll
much.
let
Yeah,
we'll let you
but
bounce
this
and
was wonderful.
we'll wrap out our
Let me
conversation.
know. I'm always here for a dissenting viewpoint.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
we're going to
always-
do Mission Impossible next and just be real positive.
Yeah,
We
it's
lo-
great.
we
Tom
love
Cruise is a
having you on.
workaholic. I love it.
Yeah.
We love having you on, so hopefully
Thank
we
you
can
guys
get you
so
on again.
much. Yeah, well,
soon.
you know where to find me.
Yeah.
Man, we just got to wait another 20 years for a franchise to die.
Yeah,
Before we can do this again.
All right.
Oh boy.
All right, then now that Mike is gone, I think
He's
we're on
wrong.
agreement.
Here's why.
He was completely wrong about everything he said. No, that's not true.
No, it's not.
I value his opinions a lot.
But we are a little sad that he's gone. He couldn't stick around for the rest of the special, but we still got more to unpack.
Got a solid hour. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So let's
Dive deeper.
Let's finish this up.
Da-na-na-na-na-na.
So we're gonna talk about Namor, the first mutant. You said dive. We're gonna dive into the waters of Atlantis, featuring Namor, the Submariner, who's not been appearing in any of these X-Men movies.
You mean Sir not appearing in this film?
Sir Namor, the Submariner.
Universal has the Mariner, I think.
Submariner.
Yeah.
The Mariner is a different thing.
Whatever. Yeah. So where do we want to start?
Sparks, I know you have more to say, so you go because I don't know where to go.
I mean, I do have more to say, but Ben didn't get to talk much in that first hour. So Ben, you say things about X-Men.
Ben was chattering the whole time. You were really quiet the whole special.
What
the hell, man?
Oh, so this is where I get called out on that. Okay. Well, unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to watch a lot of the X-Men films. I only watched X-Men, the first X-Men film yesterday. We were going to watch X2, but it got really late. And we had other stuff we needed to do. So, unfortunately, this was a week where I thought, I'll be able to watch a lot of these X-Men movies. But when you guys were talking about it, I was like, yeah, I have no thought. There's nothing I could contribute to this.
I told you should have watched those recap videos.
I couldn't. I could have, but
it's 20 minutes, Ben, compared to 7 hours.
Dude, I was dying yesterday. You know how it is.
All right, then. I'm just saying.
We were dying yesterday?
No, I was dying. Me personally,
yes,
I was dying.
That's what I said. You were dying yesterday?
I'm just saying. We stopped.
Saying.
We didn't watch X2.
Yeah.
So you had 2 hours to possibly watch some recaps.
I was reading Witches.
All right, it's cool. So tell me what you do remember about the X-Men.
What I do remember of the X-Men mostly are films that they're fun. They're not as impactful as the Marvel as the regular MCU films. They do have their flaws in it. And unfortunately, I can't compare the two. Well, actually, I can't even compare the MCU films until...
I don't think we should or need to either.
Yeah.
They were very different franchises, made at very different times. And even though the current X-Men films were trying to mimic the MCU formula, but also trying to stay to its roots, which arguably either of those directions was a mistake.
Yes.
But
they were still kind of visionless.
Yeah. And that's the whole point. But they had a different agenda going into them.
Yeah, but they're fine. Most of them I think are pretty good. Like my favorites are X-Men, X2, and Days of Future Past.
Man, we should put that on the DVD box sets for all those X-Men films. They're fine. The FakeNerd podcast.
They're fine. Then we got some real stinkers like X-Men Origins Wolverine and
Did you just call me Blob? That's not even anything like what I said, you idiot. God, I hate that.
Unfortunately, I think
and it's Kevin Durant.
I
it's
know.
a Swamp Thing boy. It's Jason Woodrue.
I know.
He still shines through all that shitty makeup.
Yeah. No, so X-Men Origins sucks. We all hate it. I only saw it once in theaters. I refused to watch it again. And
which post-credit scene did you get? Do you remember?
I think I left.
Do you remember there were three?
There were three post-credit scenes.
Post-credit scenes that cycled through different screenings. You either got the one where Deadpool has his hand in his mouth, like shushing the audience, or you get the one where
like the real Deadpool, or like
Ryan Reynolds.
It's Ryan Reynolds.
His head gets cut off at the end. Remember?
No, probably doesn't remember. It's been so long.
Yeah, sure.
And then the other post-credit scene is Wolverine in Japan.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to lead into
the Wolverine.
Well, it was the Wolverine took that thread, but as a sequel. But it was supposed to be another prequel of him in Japan.
So much like a lot of the post-credit scenes of the X-Men, they don't actually tie into the next movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Much like the endings of the X-Men films. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Once again, they're fine, but Last Stand and Origins, they suck. I don't want to watch them again.
And again,
they're god awful.
The fact that, and we talked about it a little bit, but The Last Stand and Wolverine Origins, or X-Men Origins Wolverine, the fact that it didn't destroy that franchise
is a miracle.
Is nothing but a miracle.
Like why?
And I understand. Like they did try to course correct with First Class because First Class was the next film to come out.
I thought that was a complete reboot. To be honest,
I'm sure Matthew
Vaughn kind of both
intended it to be. Well, although I wonder, because I do now, knowing he always intended to do a Days of Future Past film, I wonder how much of that was actually supposed to be a reboot and how much of it wasn't. But I do think it was supposed to be a course correction. It was supposed to be like, hey, let's go back to basics, core team, core whatever, Xavier, Magneto, and we'll go from there. And I think that showed a lot of promise. But bringing back Bryan Singer for Days of Future Past was a mistake.
And again, like, we like Days of Future Past, but maybe it was the better idea to just leave the past in the past and just focus on our new characters so we actually know who they are for the next movies.
Or even just allow more time for those characters. Like, when you get to Days of Future Past, a majority of the team you watched form in First Class is dead.
Yeah.
And dead off screen.
Almost all of them are dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
Lucas
wasteful.
Till shows up in the beginning and then disappears for the rest of the movie.
Havoc, what a waste.
Garbage.
Gosh.
I do appreciate that they tried to be like, oh yeah, Havoc is Scott's older brother now.
Yeah.
And the fact that they stuck with that, but they never did anything with him. It was dumb. The only reason why he dies in Apocalypse is because he had MacGyver.
And
He had nothing to do, yeah, in
like,
that movie.
Nothing shows how very directionless these movies are as much as things like X-Men First Class, where Charles first tries Cerebro, and it shows a little black girl with a nice little dress and long white hair, and it's like, well, that's obviously supposed to be Storm, but it's not Storm, but it's obviously supposed to be Storm.
I forgot
And then
about that.
then there's a boy with red sunglasses, like chucking a baseball up and down, and it's like, well, that's Scott. I mean, it's not Scott, but it's obviously supposed to make us think of
Remember
Scott.
the X-Men?
And it's so meaningless because it's just to make people who know the comic characters on like the most shallow surface level go, oh, the Thing, but they won't do anything with the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And I wonder, actually, again, if Days of Future Past was supposed to be the third film in a trilogy that Matthew Vaughn was going to direct, I am curious to know, was the 10-year time gap always in place from that original premise, or was it not?
Go ahead with your thing.
Well,
Ryan.
do you know the story that, like again, it was going to be, he was going to set up the Phoenix in the second movie in Days of Future Past and not in Apocalypse. They were going to introduce all those characters in Days of Future Past, but then the previous timeline stuff came in with all the original characters, and it became way too muddy, so they had to cut all those characters and put them in Apocalypse. So Matthew Vaughn, yes, he did have this idea to do this epic trilogy that the studio's like, how about we combine the movies instead of doing your cool idea? Because we want to make a lot of money. And I'm like, oh, that's one of the reasons he left.
Yeah,
Like,
I think he said creative, but he still worked for Fox for Kingsman, so it wasn't a problem. He's just like, well, will you let me do this?
Yes.
Okay. Then
Yeah,
I'll do that.
he won out.
Somebody in the studio didn't have the same ideas as him. I remember still enjoying First Class when I first saw it, but I really didn't like the ending. I felt like they rushed to the Charles and Eric thing way too fast. Just judging it as a solo film, I'm like, I understand you did this just in case this didn't do well enough.
It's a prequel.
to make money for more.
Yeah.
And you wanted to like close the loop on like this is the thing that drove them apart. And I'm like, it would have been far more interesting in the long term.
Also,
for Eric and Charles to not have gone to their absolute far ends against each other.
At the beginning.
I was like, I'm fine with Eric and Charles not being in the same location and like good with each other by the end of it. But I didn't need Charles to be paralyzed already in the first outing. I didn't need Eric to be 100% anti what Charles believes by the end of them spending a week together or so. I could have used more time than that.
Let me tell you, thinking about it now, it really bums me out that they put Charles Xavier, they give him the wheelchair at the end of this movie, and then in Days of Future Past, is that when he's the alcoholic, or is that
Yes,
Apocalypse?
Yeah.
that's when he's
So the next
not alcoholic
movie-
but the drug.
Sorry, so the next movie, he's
Out of the wheelchair?
He's out of the wheelchair again. I'm like, why even do it if you're just going to take him out of the wheelchair again? Because again, they don't know what to do with him because he's so powerful.
Not only that, something that super duper bothers me just watching. I know I didn't watch Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix again this week, obviously, but I did watch First Class and Days of Future Past, and something that super duper bothers me is Beast being able to reverse his transformation.
They wanted
a Hulk.
all 3 movies after that. Well, less than that, they just didn't want to pay for the makeup of making Beast every movie.
Which is BS because.
But it ruins the whole point of the narrative between him and Raven in the First Class film.
I mean, as much as I
100%.
don't like Last Stand, props to Kelsey Grammer for being in that makeup the whole damn movie.
He's the best thing about that
And
film.
again, one of the only good aspects, like when he meets, I think the character's Leech. Is that the character's name? Who takes his powers, and he puts his hand near Leech, who takes away mutant powers.
Right.
And his hand turns human.
Right.
And it's the first time where he's like, oh, man.
Well,
this is not what I
yeah.
expected to feel when I met this mutant.
Sure.
And I'm like, that's some good shit right there. And then that's completely thrown away.
Right, because it doesn't matter because it's a different timeline. But you're right with what you said with Hulk because they don't let Beast do anything smart while he's blue in the remaining 3 films.
He's
always
a
a
beast.
beast monster when he's blue and only smart and intelligent and doing smart things when he's a normal human. And I use that word leniently, smart. But I mean, still, they don't let him be like,
He's like the tech guy.
intelligent person and the beast at the same time. And I don't get it. I don't get it.
You can be smart and a beast.
Also,
you can be both.
Also, if you haven't watched First Class for a while, go back and revisit Beast's makeup in that movie because it was real bad. And I don't know how that happened because they'd already made Kelsey Grammer Beast. He doesn't look the same as he does in the rest of the films. They clearly had a better idea of what he needed to look like.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is that it's like his face is stuck in a certain look as Beast, so Holt can't move his facial features too much to be expressive. He has trouble talking. All his lines once he's Beast come out real weird in First Class.
Yeah, he's completely ADR'd when he's
and it shows. It shows even more now that I've seen
they definitely
the other
fixed that
films with him
later
with the
movies.
makeup.
Watch that.
But
But also, now that you brought up Dark Phoenix and you brought how bad Beast's makeup looked and the 10-year gap, and I remember when we did see Dark Phoenix and Beast was talking to Raven, aka Mystique, was like, "Man, we're the last of the original X-Men." I'm like, "You look the same."
That's a whole nother.
I know it's a whole.
That's
I know.
Other argument that he wasn't really getting at, but
boy.
I did try to bring it to that little bit when I was talking to Ryan. But you're absolutely correct. The idea of the 10-year time gap, going back to, I wonder if that was part of Matthew Vaughn's original plan, or did Bryan Singer decide to add that for some reason? And I kind of wonder. I kind of think it was a Singer decision, because if Matthew Vaughn had done the 3-film trilogy that he intended to do, I think the next film was going to introduce those kids that we see in Cerebro as Scott and
That was the plan.
Like, I really do think that was the plan, and it would make sense because it would just been another 2 years later. And I think Matthew Vaughn, look, I'm only extrapolating from what I've heard, but I really do think that his intention was to keep the X-Men films in the past and not get to the present.
Which I would have been happier with. I still disagree with the decision of how they handled Eric at the end of First Class, but I would have been happier without those 10-year time jumps. Because those 10-year time jumps, I mean, you can be like, well, the whole X-Men timeline's messed up anyway. So
but it's not 40
and that's
years
true. And that's
removed.
True. Yes.
Like, it's
and that's true. But it's also like, you didn't need to do this, and most of the time it was for cosmetic decisions or whatever, or music you wanted to use. I don't care. And it stops working past Days of Future Past. It really does. Like, Days of Future Past is the only one where I find it even mildly acceptable, and even then I still think that they don't show it over a decade of growth, because they say it's been over 10 years since the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I have a quote from 2 months ago regarding this exact situation. Vaughn specifically cites Fox's decision to make Days of Future Past the direct sequel to First Class, and he says, quote, "That's one of the reasons I didn't continue, because they didn't listen to me. My plan for First Class, then the second film, was to introduce a new Wolverine in the 70s and continue those characters, my version of the X-Men, the First Class. And then the next movie after that would be Days of Future Past, and then Apocalypse." So they just cut a movie out. They just entirely cut a movie out, and that completely effed everything up. So he's like, I shouldn't be here anymore, then it's not my movie.
It did.
I don't think the keep doing 10-year things was the idea.
Yeah, I really don't think so.
And at the very end of the day, when we're in the 90s, think with these characters from the 60s, are like, these characters are all 60 years old, and they're beautiful at 25. Like, give me a break.
And then they don't treat it like decades have aged them.
They're not
any
any more
character
mature.
development.
They're not any more mature. Some characters have
Nothing has
regressed.
really happened, and almost nothing has really happened. Even if it had been a year, they treat like the gap between Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix is like almost nothing has changed.
I think I actually have a similar problem with the later MCU films as I do with the gap between Days of Future Past and Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix. Days of Future Past and First Class, I do think that there is a sense that time has passed. I don't think a decade worth of time has passed.
No,
but
not at all.
We do get a sense that something has happened and that these characters have changed from that something. Most importantly, probably the Vietnam War has changed them in ways that they didn't expect. Like, I felt that. It's not enough, but it's there, and I appreciated that it was there. They put in the legwork there. The later MCU films, especially going from Civil War to Infinity War, I don't get a sense that 2 years have passed. I get a sense that maybe probably a couple months, but 2 years have passed between then.
I agree with you. I agree that it's hard to sometimes believe the gaps that we have to in the MCU for how many years they're supposed to have passed, and like events that we didn't see on screen clearly must have happened, but the characters aren't fully evolving. And the fact that I can't even buy a year or two in the MCU means like I really can't buy a decade over at the X-Men films.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
You are not doing enough. I don't think you understand how much growth happens in a decade, let alone 2 years.
Weird enough, you know how the CW shows have like their like season 11 or 0 season, stuff like that? Man, this would have been a perfect opportunity to have like an X-Men movie comic book where it is like the middle, like, hey, between X-Men and X-Men 2, there's like 4 years, right?
Sure.
Just have a comic about that.
I desperately want wanted there to be a comic book set between the Wolverine and Days of Future Past, like following the old cast. How you get to explain why Xavier is there, explain why Wolverine has his metal claws again. Like you can extrapolate. Oh, he's like my theory was that Magneto manipulated the metal in his bones to regrow the metal on his claws. Which sure, whatever. But I do think that there is because where we leave them in the Wolverine to where we see them again in Days of Future Past. Holy shit. Like, what the hell?
You shouldn't have those. Why does he have his back?
But it's just the world in general is just to shit.
Oh, yeah,
again,
totally.
It's and again, being at like the future where humanity is taken over and it's really apocalyptic, like it's a tone change, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really jarring and weird, and it's very clear that when they were making the post-credit scene of the Wolverine, they had no clue what Days of Future Past was doing.
Yeah.
Like the two were not connected. Yeah.
Yeah, I always just found that I do get the sense that the characters kind of play it as like we've been through some stuff where we've grown through this experience together. I do get the sense that the characters are playing it that way, but I never understood how the world, how it's so decrepit and apocalyptic. Like there's no sense that there's a normalcy in the world. It's just we just get the sense that now everything's destroyed, all the cities are gone, and mutants are hunted, and probably people are dead.
I mean, but that is, to be fair to that like movie and book, like Days of Future Past is the apocalypse has happened, and most of everyone's dying. Just like mutants are getting the worst of it, but that is a true apocalyptic scenario. So like I can't. That's the part I don't blame them for using that.
It's not even to me. It's with Days of Future Past. It's not even that they don't explain the state of the world enough for me. It's that I don't get to spend enough time with those characters who I should be happy to see.
Basically, yeah.
I don't get to spend enough time with them to understand like what they've been through, where they're at, who they are now. Other than like we wear leather now, more leather, different leather. Another kind of leather, and Eric's here too.
All
like,
the leather.
That's all the change I get. I don't understand like what these characters have gone through. And the last time I saw them was X3, and I'm like, there's some stuff I'd like to understand about them.
Yeah.
They're not treated as real characters in it, which again, I didn't talk about this on air, so I'll talk about it here. I really didn't care much for Days of Future Past when I saw it in theaters. I liked it far more when I saw it on Blu-ray because I saw the Rogue cut.
Yeah, Rogue cut.
And the Rogue cut, I think, is far superior to the theatrical cut because it at least gives the characters who are supposed to be in our future something to do.
And again, I can't believe that's like again like without the Rogue cut, that movie's still fine. But like we mentioned in the car, like Rogue is like your introductory character to the X-Men in this universe, in these movies.
What an interesting choice, by the way.
Yeah, and they completely cut her out of this movie completely. And I'm like, she's a fundamental character to this, not just the X-Men like comics, but to your movies.
Yeah.
And you just throw her away.
Yeah.
Like that's disrespectful to that character.
You know what I just realized? It feels like the Days of Future Past that we got, especially with all the old cast members like Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, it's kind of like member berries in a way.
Oh yeah.
It's like
they're playing it in nostalgia hard.
Oh yeah, because
we didn't earn this Days of Future Past.
No,
especially I do like Days of Future Past. We don't earn it for going from First Class to Days of Future Past or the Wolverine to Days of Future Past.
So do I.
Don't earn
Days
it.
of Future Past is one of my is probably my favorite X-Men film. I really love that movie.
Yeah.
But it's straight up member berries because you're right. We don't get like after the Wolverine and we see Patrick Stewart show up. He's like, "Hello, Logan." It's like, how? Like even Logan's like, you shouldn't be here because if this is still
you can easily like, he's manipulated everyone to see Patrick Stewart.
And as and it is a cool scene to see young Xavier and old Xavier like,
I like that scene.
This is who I become, and the future sucks.
But unfortunately, I know the X-Men timeline is a cluster shack, and I promise not to bring it up too much. But we saw Xavier die in Last Stand. He shouldn't be there at the end of Wolverine.
The post-credit sequence of The Last Stand reveals that he has put himself in a different body.
Much like House of X.
So he is alive.
Well, apparently I never saw the post-credit scene of Last Stand.
And it's
so
not
I didn't
even.
know.
Oh yeah,
It's
no,
not
that
even
happens.
Even a post-credit scene because it's at the end of the movie. Like it's not at the end.
Oh no, you're right. It's not a post-credit scene.
You don't have to wait till the very end of the movie. It's at the end of the movie.
No. It's after some credits.
But it's not the post-end very end scene. You can still watch the movie.
It's like mid-credits. What we say for MCU now.
But I'm saying most people are like the movie's still going on when the scene is happening. Is what I mean.
I upped the theater and left.
Yeah. So
the second the credits started rolling, I was up and gone, or I changed the channel.
See, that's why I said if you can explain it away, because at the end of that, he put his consciousness in someone else's body at the end of that film. So you could just say, oh, he's manipulating everyone's thoughts to see.
Also,
Patrick
Days of
Stewart.
Future Past rewrites the timeline, so like it doesn't even.
Yeah, so
it doesn't even matter.
But it doesn't
You're right.
rewrite that timeline.
That's why that.
But it's so dumb.
It doesn't. But it doesn't make sense. Like they weren't catering. They don't have a good through line. You have to just let that go, because like in X3, you get Moira McTaggart. Right, and she's there,
and she
and
looks
it's like,
young.
cool. Hey, we met her in X-Men First Class, so right away that don't work. And she's the one who explains the body that Charles goes into. Last shot of X3 is actually when Eric moves the chess piece.
Yeah.
You're right.
That's the last shot of the film proper, and then there's some credits, and then Charles is in that body.
Okay, I only remember the ending of X3. I only remember is Magneto moving the chess piece
That's
in New
also
York City.
stupid. That is also a stupid thing to have him move that chess piece.
It's like,
a little bit.
I don't
It
have
was a bad ending.
It completely negates the entire movie if he actually can still get his powers back.
I
Like,
would-
excuse me, sorry, the only part of the ending of X3 that I like is Rogue finally touching Bobby's hand, skin to skin,
after she gave up her powers.
after she gave her powers. That is the
that's
only,
that's definitely the Rogue I know.
I mean, that's the only part of it I accept, because she was of all the mutants who wanted the cure, and I felt like she should get it, was her, because she could not hold another person ever.
Did you see that there's a large contingent of the fan base who wants Rogue introduced into the Marvel films just to kill Captain Marvel?
Oh, okay. Whatever.
Well, she doesn't kill Captain Marvel. She just gets her powers.
I know people
Just-
are misinterpreting
yeah.
how
Yeah.
that happens. So dumb.
They're definitely going to meet, though.
All right.
That's why Rogue can fly in the TV series.
She gets her powers from Captain Marvel.
She touches Captain Marvel, and it happens in the comics too. But she touches Captain Marvel, but the powers don't go away.
Oh.
So she still has strength.
So she has like
and
super
flight.
strength and she can fly.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just accepted it. I didn't care.
Yeah. So
Now you know.
there's a reason.
I really don't like in X3 how Eric like kind of just gets over Charles being murdered in front of him.
Yeah.
He's just like,
Well, that sucked.
oh no, Charles. All right, so Jean, you seem really useful at this destruction thing. I'd like to aim that at human beings. Like immediately into that, and it's not until like late, like there he gets one toss away line towards Pyro, because Pyro says something really stupid about Xavier, and Charles or Eric stops him and he says, Charles Xavier did more for mutants than any of you ever will.
Yeah.
And my one regret is that he won't live to see us overtake mankind.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm
good
like,
stuff.
cool, that's great, but like it's really jarring to watch him just walk away from his friend being like disintegrated in front of him and just be cool,
Yeah.
whatever. I
When,
don't like it at all.
It is a striking image when Jean Grey destroys Xavier.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
I think the music in X3 is pretty good.
the music
is
in
too.
X-Men 3 is really good.
It's like maybe the best part of the movie. But with a different movie, that'd be like, this
Talking-
is epic.
talking about something that's good. John Ottman's score, his theme for X-Men 2, 1, Days of Future Past, and Apocalypse. I believe he used an Apocalypse. I wish that theme stayed throughout
Days of Future Past, yeah.
Yeah, I think that score stayed through. I wish that score stayed throughout the whole
Dun,
franchise.
dun, 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 dun.
I mean, it's really only not utilized as much in First Class.
It's every single film that is not edited and scored by John Ottman does not have that theme song, and I really dislike that. Oh, I get it because it's Ottman's score, and probably people want to put their own spin on it.
Mm-hmm.
But when Ottman uses that score, when Days of Future Past starts, and I hear the dun na 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 na, like I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. We're watching an X-Men movie.
While we're on X-Men 3, Warren?
Oh,
What is
Ben
he
Foster.
even in the movie for?
Ben Foster.
Angel?
Because the Worthington Company is the ones with the cure, so they have to have.
But
blah,
it's
blah, blah.
but it like they
You don't need
they
the
do
Wor-
nothing with it.
You don't need the Worthingtons to be the cure people. So like you didn't need Angel.
You don't need Angel.
Though the opening is really effective.
Yeah,
With him
where
cutting the
you
wings?
see him
Yeah.
trying to cut his wings off.
Yeah, that's a really effective
I-
moment.
I do, because he's like, okay, I'm going to get the angel, then I'm going to get the cure, then we finally see him with his full wings and the...
But
He says like, "I'm sorry, Dad."
Yeah, but the nurse is like, why would you want to get rid of that? I want that.
but what's super jarring is that the movie opens with Jean, young Jean, right?
Uh-huh.
And Charles and Eric coming to see her.
Oh, Stanley cameo.
And then goes to the young Warren cutting his wings. Then the movie starts, and I'm like, what? Why? Why didn't Warren just like tell this story to somebody? This is so weird.
Speaking of Stan Lee cameo, Ryan, you had eagle eyes when we saw the
No,
first
Fanny
X-Men.
did. We both missed it.
Oh, that's right, Fanny did.
In the first X-Men movie,
Yeah,
Stanley's cameo. He
he's
doesn't
on
say
the
anything.
beach.
He's just on the beach.
I completely missed it.
So did I. Fanny's like, "Hey, Stanley," and we're like, "Oh, excuse me."
we rewound it. We were like, oh shit, there he is.
He still had a little bit of gray before he went full
I guess
white.
X-Men was his first cameo. I always thought it was Fantastic Four.
I thought
No, it was X-Men.
I thought it was Spider-Man or
Nope.
Spider-Man 2.
X-Men came first.
X-Men,
Okay.
baby.
He doesn't have a cameo in Spider-Man 1.
No, not Spider-Man, but he does
Yeah,
in
he does.
Spider-Man 2. Wait,
He
does?
grabs a kid away from the falling rubble.
But
And
that's
then
Spider-Man
Green Goblin
2.
destroys it. No, that's Spider-Man 1.
Oh, okay.
Yep, you're
Look
right.
out!
You're right. Spider-Man 2 where he's
You know,
Spider-Man 2 is the one where he says, someone can't make a difference, right?
That's Spider-Man 3.
yeah, that's
What the
Spider-Man.
hell is a Spider-Man 2 cameo?
I don't remember, but I know specifically that the Spider-Man 1 is him pulling the kid away from the rubble.
because Mary Jane's wearing the white,
The
the red dress.
Yes, the red
Does
dress.
Stan Lee just give Peter his mask after the train sequence? Is that where his cameo is?
No,
'Cause
that's not
damn.
it. It's not that. It's something far simpler.
Ryan,
I'll look it up.
yeah, I was about to say, can you look it up, please, Ryan?
It
And
took
while he does that,
it took until X-Men 3 for them to give Aurora anything to say.
Jeez Louise.
Like really.
Again, like
But
maybe
they
the
beef
most.
up her part in X2 because Halle Berry grew in stardom between
And she got
the
an Oscar.
first two films. But even then, it wasn't enough.
I do not like her hair in X3.
What's the hair?
That's where you can suddenly see her roots when prior to that she
Oh,
had
yeah.
all white hair.
Oh.
And they're just like, done with that. And like the haircut is fine, but the roots, it's like mostly more black than it is white. And I'm like, okay.
In Spider-Man 1, he's a helpless bystander. In Spider-Man 2, he saves a lady. And then in Spider-Man 3, he's the, well, maybe you're cool, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Enough said. You know what, Spider-Man, you're a pretty cool guy.
I don't remember exactly why I wrote this note, but I wrote a note when I was watching X3 and it said, thus the introduction of the bland leather wearing, I'm talking about the gothy
Talking about
mutants
Kid
with
Omega?
tattoos and everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're bad
Quinn
guys.
Choir?
Zero characterization.
So-
I did have notes because I was taking notes through the films, and one of my favorites was in X2. I'm like, Pyro's character in X2 is entirely based around Zippo flipping, and then for X3, I was like, Pyro's character in X3 is entirely based around hair dye.
Hell yeah. The edgy X-Men.
That guy has no character whatsoever throughout the two films, and he serves no real purpose. The only thing that's useful is that conversation with Magneto, which I know you'll bring up. But I'm like, we could have put a different mutant there.
No,
It didn't
I
need to be
agree
him.
he's completely underutilized, but like I get he's the one kid at Xavier School who thinks like Magneto, and like he's not developed well, but like it's very easy to see like, oh, he's leading towards Magneto's camp. So like
For sure. You could have done the same thing to explore Bobby's character, since Bobby doesn't have much to work with anyway.
Yeah.
Right after he's been abandoned by his family who called the cops on them, he could have a similar conversation with Eric, and he would have gotten just as much meat out of it and fleshed out a character we care about.
Oh, I do like that scene where he's where we go see Bobby Drake's family.
Yeah.
And his mom's like, "Have you tried
Not being a
and
mutant?
Logan is an art teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff's great. I love
That's
that
a
scene.
In Days of Future Past,
Oh.
when it ends and he teaches history, I was like, oh, you missed a beat. Should have been art.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? When him and Bobby had their talking, that they're like at the school. Bobby's having like a midnight snack, and Logan's like,
X2?
"Yeah, next
Yeah.
to it." And Logan's like, "Is there any beer?" And Bobby's like, "This is a school." So
Yes, so. And he hands Logan
Dr.
Logan grabs a beer.
no,
and
he
then
grabs like a soda,
a
and
root
then,
beer.
and then and he's like cold, and then Bobby just goes, "Phoom," and it turns to cold.
he just
instantly.
blows on it. Yeah.
In X3, Logan learns that Charles has been putting up psychic barriers to keep away a separate identity.
No,
of
don't you mean
being
Dark
that-
Phoenix?
Yes, it's called Phoenix, and it's a separate identity that she's had since she was a child. That is the side of Jean that can't control her powers, and that's what he's been putting up the psychic barriers for. Not so that she doesn't remember some trauma. It's because she literally has a different alternate personality. That's how Charles explains it to Logan, and Logan blames Charles in that moment for what gives you the responsibility to do that. And he's like, you don't understand what I did, all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, so all that, okay, that was all in X3 too. All right,
Oh yeah. It's the same.
yeah,
It's bad.
yeah. It's not a good movie. Everything that happens with Scott at Alkali Lake in X3 is awful. Just awful.
Mostly
it doesn't even
mostly
make sense.
Cyclops is awful.
No, I know, but like it doesn't even make sense. Like, what is he doing? Why is he called out to the
I'll
lake?
tell you what he's doing.
to
He's gonna go
blast at
be
the
in
water.
Superman Returns. That's what he's doing.
I mean, yeah, I understand.
That's the real answer. He was like, I don't want to be in this X-Men movie anymore. Kill me off so I can go be in a bad Superman movie.
I know, but I'm still like, kill him off there. But what?
Yo, if Bryan Singer came to you, hey, you can continue to have no character development in this, or I could bring you to do Superman.
And have no character in that either.
I mean, you wouldn't frame it like that.
No, I know.
I would always pick Superman. Like, hell yeah, I'm gonna be in a Superman movie.
The point is, I think James Marsden is getting the short end of the stick every movie he gets. No matter what he does, that dude's getting shafted.
Hey James,
Sonic.
I was just about to make a joke about that.
At least he has Ella Enchanted.
Nope. Enchanted.
What's Ella Enchanted?
That's a different movie.
Completely
At
different.
least he has Enchanted.
That's true.
Enchanted is pretty good. Enchanted 2 should be coming soon, I think.
Yeah. Hell yeah,
Theoretically.
Amy Adams.
Um,
All right.
Yeah. For X3, I'm gonna go through.
I don't want to talk about X3
notes.
anymore.
No,
We're
I'm
talking
gonna
about
do
X3 a
it.
lot.
You're stuck here.
I don't want
You're
it.
stuck here.
I don't want to do this anymore.
We're going to do it, and you are going to like it.
A lot of these I covered.
You will suffer like your elders did.
Let's talk about Dark Phoenix. Let's talk about Apocalypse.
We did talk about Dark Phoenix.
We spent a lot of time on Dark Phoenix. I'm okay.
Did we?
Yeah, we reviewed it.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
guess.
no, I'm. Oh, actually, you know what? Interestingly enough, so Dark Phoenix I had an interesting reaction to it. I was not the movie itself, but they're doing the pre-order for the DVD and the Blu-ray and blah 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 blah. blah. So Sparks, you know this, but Disney DVDs and Blu-rays for the past 2 years have had the multi-screen edition with the silver cover art and with the you've seen those, right?
Sure.
Well, I was looking on Amazon. You can pre-order Dark
Oh,
Phoenix
I know what
now,
you're going with this now.
and it is the multi-screen edition with the silver and the. I was like, oh, Disney, I forgot. Oh, this is weird. I'm not ready for this.
They also are remarketing the movie to call it X-Men Dark
Dark
Phoenix
Phoenix.
instead of just Dark Phoenix because they need to make more money back.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's whatever. They probably need to get the money from Fox.
Okay, I do have a last thing on X3.
The Last Stand?
Yeah. So I really like the Wolverine. Especially in the way
I
that
do
it's a
too.
character piece that follows up on Logan dealing with the trauma of killing Jean.
Mhm.
What I really hate about X3 in retrospect is that X3 ends with Charles just kind of at the last scene is him walking around the mansion going, yeah, we really fixed things, guys. Like it's all real good. And I'm like, cool, this actually makes no freaking sense with where that character's traumatized and at in the Wolverine.
Wait, is that really how last?
Yes,
Time
that's
ends?
really how it ends, is that he's watching Beast on the news being introduced by the president. And he's like, way to go, Furball. And that's the last line of the movie. And he walks out onto the patio of the Xavier Institute and he's like, nice. And like that's the attitude. And I'm like, wow.
Wait, that
okay.
was Logan who did that?
Yeah, that's X3.
Yeah,
Well,
I
X-Men
remember
3
now.
was supposed to be the end to the trilogy. Like studios were very trilogy minded at the time. It was that X-Men 3 was going to be the end of the X-Men franchise for the most part. They were banking on Wolverine Origins to launch a new trilogy of Wolverine origin films.
Well, not. Yeah, I was gonna say not just Wolverine films, but like origin films in general. Because we were getting that Magneto one, the Gambit
Which
one.
turned it,
Fantastic.
Magneto basically backdoored into First Class.
Yeah. Although I don't think the Wolverine was even. I think James Mangold kind of was like, well, what if that didn't happen?
Well, remember before Mangold, it was Aronofsky.
Oh shit, you're
That
right.
would have been, man, what a movie that could have
I know. I'm happy with what we got, but I've always wondered what Aronofsky's would look like. And some things from Aronofsky's script still carried over to James Mangold's.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which is part of why I think there are flaws with the Wolverine in comparison to Logan, is because it's not James Mangold's like project through and through. He's still trying to carry on things that like he's good, and so is Aronofsky, but he's trying to do Aronofsky's things.
I really like the beginning of that movie, actually.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched the beginning with you, and like, yeah, the beginning of the movie is really strong.
Where he goes into the bar.
Yeah,
Wolverine?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a good scene.
and I
No,
just
I'm talking about the Hiroshima bit.
Oh yeah, I mean that
that-
too.
That's
Yeah.
two.
But
I
I mean,
really
like,
like that
the whole first 20 minutes is like from, yes, the Hiroshima bit is great, but also him being in exile, living with the haunted memories of killing Jean, who, like, as much as that is a wafer thin love story, I'm like, cool. At least this is some cool character.
But it was
payoff.
important to Wolverine, which makes sense that he would be traumatized by
My
it.
only problem with that is that if you actually like take these films seriously as continuity, then Logan only really spent time with Jean for maybe 6 months before she quote unquote died.
Yeah.
Because Logan went looking for Alkali Lake, came back, X2 happened, she dies.
yeah.
That's how long they knew each other. Sure, there was a flirtation attraction, but there was nothing really developed in it. And then they're like, well, Logan loved her very deeply. And I'm like, cool, like, if I have to accept Origins Wolverine, he loved that other girl way more. So this is kind of flimsy at best.
Yeah. They're just
It's
using-
just not, and honestly, like every relationship in the X-Men franchise that's a coupling relationship is handled poorly, with the exception of maybe Nicholas Hoult and Raven. I think they're the only ones who get proper screen time to try to develop them. Even then, they're not done that well, but they're given more due justice than anyone else. Scott and Jean and Logan.
Oh, hey guys, remember when Charles Xavier he mind erased his girlfriend and then unerased her mind
yeah.
so he could be with her?
He did that. And then she disappeared.
Wow.
for
Forever.
2 movies. She showed up again in Apocalypse.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, so
Her memory was erased. And
Yeah,
like,
he went to her, kissed her, or gave her, or didn't kiss her.
Then
but
she
like,
disappeared
like-
again.
Yeah, then she
gave
disappeared
her the
again.
Superman
She was-
mind wipe kiss.
Like,
Yeah.
she was nowhere in Dark Phoenix. So I'm like,
Or it's a
oh,
future
guess
past,
we're not
yeah.
getting Rose Byrne
Yeah.
back again.
Yeah, oh
Okay,
well.
that's a bummer.
I don't think Rose Byrne wanted to come back after Apocalypse.
I don't believe.
Don't blame her.
She was a glorified cameo. She disappears after like the first 30 minutes.
I think she comes back at the end, but yeah, she's not barely. Yeah.
I think she
Yeah.
dodged the bullet there.
Let's see. Quicksilver is pretty cool. He's one
For
of the.
the one movie, and then I got real tired. of him
I didn't
real
mind.
quick.
Again, it was the same scene again in the next movie, but like he is a charming guy that I think adds to that movie.
His hair looks terrible.
I don't. It's whatever. I don't mind it.
It looks so fake.
I like the music choice in
But
Apocalypse.
Wolverine's fake Goku hair looks real.
No, I mean, like, I have a note about X2 that one of the worst things is that Logan's hair is getting more Ace Ventura with every scene in that one, and by the end of the movie, it is full-blown Ace Ventura hair.
It's
crazy.
Like,
dude.
his last shot in X2 is real goofy, and I'm
Yeah.
glad that... I think, like, on the scale of, like, them trying to do that thing with his hair, it looks best in the Wolverine.
Yeah. Okay.
Once his hair gets cut, it looks the best in the Wolverine because
Yeah.
it's very subtle, but it's present.
Yeah, I don't actually need you to do like the hair curl.
No, neither do
thing,
I.
'cause,
Neither
like,
do I.
You don't. Yeah, it's too much.
It's too Ventura.
Yeah.
Ventura made it funny, and you can't do it seriously.
Woo! Don't go in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like Quicksilver. I like Quicksilver in the first film that he shows up in.
Days of Future Past.
A little bit in Apocalypse, I guess, to an extent. I am glad that he's. But when he like takes the tumble in Dark Phoenix, I'm like, oh, thank God.
He like many other side characters in the X-Men films, what they suffer from is the fact that their characterization is their power and not much past that.
Yeah.
They're not given anything to be.
Again,
anything
he's
past that.
Quicksilver is so strong, and
Yeah.
it's like they always have to write him out of the movie because like, oh, he could just save the world if we really wanted him to. It's the same with Charles Xavier. Like these mutants that are way too powerful, they don't know what to do with them. They're not clever enough to use their powers in an interesting way.
Yeah, and then they don't give them anything else to do. They're not given anything to drive them.
Literally,
or motivate
Quicksilver
them.
gets like taken out in the first part of the movie of Dark Phoenix. So like he would be able to just win. He would win.
Sure.
Yeah.
X-Men guys.
Yeah, Quicksilver. I mean, I like the first slowdown sequence, but I like the musical choice in Apocalypse a little bit better.
Yeah,
That's the only thing I can say about that second speed scene.
Yeah.
The second everything slowed down, I'm thinking, oh, we're doing this.
There is a pizza
again.
a pizza dog in that movie. And
There's
I'm
a
like,
pizza
all
dog,
right.
and the pizza dog is cool, but still, it's one of those. Oh, they're doing this again. It worked really well in Days of Future Past, but now they're doing
It's
it
also real dumb.
again.
It's real dumb that they use that sequence to kill Havoc.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. That's what a throwaway of just kill of a character.
Hey, Ryan, wreak havoc. I don't know. I just always had a problem whenever James McAvoy said that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Because he's like, wreak havoc. And I'm like, oh, that was his name. And then he's dead.
I see what you did there.
I'm done.
Yeah, I think it's really disappointing that characters, so they have such a wealth and library of characters, and they very much like resort to here's the person, here's the power, oh boop, and then they're not interested in exploring anything past that in almost all the cases.
You know what? I think that's why I really enjoyed when Ryan had us read Wolverine and the X-Men last week. Or was it last week?
2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago?
Week ago? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Well, whenever it was your last book club last, because I really enjoyed
last week.
It was last week, yeah. Like, I really enjoyed reading that because Ryan says, like, hey, there's a bunch of characters in here that you don't know, and I was really enjoying reading about the characters that I never met. I don't know. Like, when you said that Spike dude in X3 was Quentin Quire, I call bullshit.
I can't believe that.
But like, but still, that is nuts. Still, on like a film scale, you really don't know those characters.
No.
It's so frustrating that like isolate the trilogies or combine the whole series or whatever you want to do. All the characters are basically living by the exact same template from the first film they were introduced in. They're roughly that same character, and they're not allowed to grow or divert away from it.
They're bad 1999 templates.
Yeah.
Like Cyclops is like in the movies he's just like he's the dick.
Yeah.
Like that's his character. He's the dick. He's the stern one. I'm like, hey man, there's a lot more to a character than just being the dick. Or Jean Grey's like the pretty one. Or like Storm is like the one who does lightning. Like that's not a character. Your powers aren't your character choices. And I'm like, when I think about all these X-Men movies, I'm like, wow, like even Logan, who is the main character, like is the only one with real character besides like Xavier and Charles.
It's not fair
Magneto.
to compare the Marvel Cinematic Universe to the X-Men films. That said, what the reason?
Just real quick, I just want to interject on that. I think it is fair to compare once the MCU had started.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, post MCU.
You're
yeah.
living in a world where comic book movies have then changed at that point. You're no longer setting the stream. You have to be willing to be compared.
Sure. What Kevin Feige learned on X-Men, we know he was a producer on X-Men, he was a producer on Spider-Man, we know he's been a producer on
All
a lot
the
of
Marvels.
these films. What he learned is to get people who may not have read the comics, but who understands the characters that they want to do. Kenneth Branagh has never read a Thor comic in his life, and I don't care what he says. I don't believe for a second he's read a Thor comic. But he understood the take he wanted to take the character, and I think that's why that film was largely successful.
I was listening to, you might have listened to this too, I don't know, Jon Favreau did an Empire podcast piece when he was talking about The Lion King. And during that, they talked about a lot of things, and they talked about Iron Man. And he said that when they went in to do Iron Man, he was like, so do we need to try and make Iron Man more appealing to a wider, larger audience? And Kevin Feige said, no, I want you to speak to our fans who are already there, and hopefully we can bring more fans along the way.
Smart.
That's his stance.
That's smart.
And that's just not what's happened with the X-Men movies.
Because if you do it right, the people will come.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I think it's honestly why I think First Class is largely successful. Is because it does that. It says, here are the X-Men, here are the characters I'm doing. For all the film's fault, I do think that film. I think what you're saying about the powers being the characterizations, I don't think that's the case in First Class for the most part. I don't. Sometimes it is, but mostly I don't think it is, because they said it's the Deadpool thing. We're not going to make Deadpool appeal to a wider audience. We're just going to put Deadpool on the screen, and people come. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think First Class's most guilty sins, in my opinion, are the way that it rushes to its ending. And I don't mean just like to the end of the film, but to an ending of like these characters' arcs, rather than allowing room for them to be explored further in future films, and forcing like these new decisions to have to be made. And like, oh, we got to go around all these ways to make Eric here, but then make him bad again because he's already bad. And I'm like, he could have just not been bad yet.
I also think the choice of characters in First Class is really odd because, again, most of them are either bad or dead by the end. And
right.
It's just Beast and Mystique, who only one of them is an actual original X-Men.
Right.
And I'm saying, like, you couldn't do Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix because if you're going to introduce Cyclops in the 60s, that'd be a drastically different character now.
Sure.
But if you're going to do First Class, do First Class. Don't do First Class and then kill off your entire First Class.
Sure.
That goes back to what I think, whatever the next movie was going to be, I think a lot of those characters are going to come back.
But I mean, even in that film, we lose Darwin, who, like, it's a cool death in the fact that Shaw, like, absorbs that energy and then just pushes it,
redirects it to him
right through his mouth. Neat. But I didn't need Darwin to die that soon.
Yeah.
I didn't need it. Yeah, a lot of the bad guys get like forced decisions put on them. Pretty much everybody who isn't Kevin Bacon kind of just is nothing.
Kevin Bacon. That's the name I've been trying to think of all day.
Whirlwind?
Yeah,
That's
Wind
Whirlwind.
Tornado
I
Man.
forgot that guy was in this movie, Whirlwind.
That's because he never talks and has no character, because his character is his power.
Even in the good X-Men movies, there's the characters that just show up.
The same can be said of Azazel. Yeah, I mean, like, it is a rampant problem across pretty much all of them except maybe X-Men 1.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, actually,
is that you have just, like, they just shove Colossus out next to, but he's not really a character. Kitty Pryde is present, but not really a character till they cast Ellen Page. Mm-hmm. It's an issue. And the other part of it, this is something we also didn't talk about on air, is something I'm starting to maybe notice might be true about Matthew Vaughn films, is that he has a problem with the way he frames sexism, especially like in the basis of that it's supposed to be villains who are saying sexism, and that's okay because it's the bad guys. You're not supposed to like that they're saying it. And I'm like, yeah, but it's still kind of like being played for jokes or intent in a way where it like would appeal to people who believe that that's good or funny. And
you mentioned
the
Rose Byrne thing. We're like, oh, women shouldn't be working in the CIA, and like we're supposed to laugh at that. We're supposed to notice his sexism being like bad and funny,
right?
It's still in the movie.
And I'm thinking back to like the way that he handled. I'm forgetting her name, but Brandon, you're going to know it in Kingsman 2.
Lancelot.
Thank you. The way that he handled her out. I'm like, that's a real big sexist move, honestly. So. Yikes!
In First Class, what's
and the whole
is her name Pixie? What's her name? The winged spitter.
The one with
it's
the
Angel.
It's Angel.
Oh, they call her
name is Angel.
They call her
yeah.
Angel.
Why?
Yeah. Same thing. Like that.
That's not her
in the same scene that Darwin is killed. She's moved to the other side, and you have a whole bunch of white people. That's also not a good look. Yeah. I was just remembering, like, also in Kingsman 2, that's the one where, like, oh yeah, he's gonna have troubles with his girlfriend because he's got to put the thing inside of her vagina. Yikes. So
the word vagina is funny. Oh, you laughed,
But-
didn't you?
But X-Men
So dumb.
X-Men First Class, I think, works at its best when it's specifically focused on Eric and Charles because they're allowed to actually have their characters have arcs throughout the film and grow. Even arguably Raven to an extent, though I think it's undercut towards the end of the film and they don't flesh out enough like why she ultimately decides to go with Eric at the end, except for the fact that like Beast really recklessly messes up with her in a way that feels like contrived writing rather than something sincere because it's the whole
Is that the
you're
the
that's the part where he comes in with the cure for her and he's
Yes.
like, well, you're beautiful now when she's changed into Jennifer Lawrence, and he's implying that she isn't beautiful when she's blue, and it's like, wow, you really messed that up, bro.
considering what you look like, my man?
Oh, and then later on, Dark Phoenix, when she's like getting a little more comfortable as a blue Mystique, but then while the kids show up, she changes back to Jennifer Lawrence.
It's never addressed.
Yeah.
Yes, her name, by the way, in the comics is Angel.
It's Angel. There's two Angels.
So in the
Who's
comics,
Pixie?
So her name is Angel Salvador.
Okay.
That's her name. Her alias, according to Marvel's,
Yeah.
Pedia page, whatever they call them these days, her aliases have been Angel, Tempest, and MSA.
Weird. Okay.
So yeah, so she is actually
Sure.
Angel.
So why have a second Angel in a movie when there's thousands of other mutants? Is my problem. Is
Yeah.
my thing. That's what I'm saying.
If I could change one thing about like the films going from First Class all the way to Dark Phoenix, that section of films, I would at least make the decisions and character arcs of Beast and Mystique consistent. Because they're not. It's unclear exactly where Beast is supposed to stand on his own physical appearance and where he's gone and accepting it or not accepting it.
Uh-huh.
And that's super problematic in the sense that, like, after First Class, he just should have been stuck at being blue. And it could have been a whole thing where he's not happy about it and then he comes to terms with it or whatever.
Yeah.
But that is so wildly, unfortunately, inconsistent because it could be a strong through line and it just isn't.
And again, like the timelines are messed up and stuff, but like I can't buy that this Mystique is the Mystique from the original X-Men movies. It's impossible for me to believe that.
Sure.
Because the history of these characters have, like, again, they made the first X-Men movie before any of these movies, obviously. So
Yeah.
when Charles is like, his name is Magneto, and I've been fighting him for decades, and it's like, it's very like
For centuries is a very different movie.
You know what? It's very exposition. Like they don't know who each other are.
I met Eric when I was 17.
Yeah, and like it's very just
He
like
helped me build Cerebro.
I don't. It's so different. It's so weird when we have all the movies that come after that's supposed to build to this
Yeah,
moment,
and-
but the movie itself didn't build anything. It's
Sure.
like this is Magneto. He's the bad guy. We don't have a history. Like
100%.
it makes it so much more confusing the further we get from it.
Yeah, I was also going to point out.
Although I really like the first scene they have together, when Xavier and Magneto meet
in the UN.
In the UN, yeah.
No, yeah,
I really
absolutely.
think that's a
Yeah.
good scene. What were you gonna say?
I was also going to point this out to you because I told Ryan about this. When I was watching Days of Future Past, I realized something that if Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix had built up an actual arc intentionally, because this is where I do blame them and compare them to the MCU, that I'm like, you knew you were going for some sequels. If you knew, you should have. You had the tools.
This is the late
You could have
2010s.
you could have been planning ahead.
Yeah.
So, Charles knows Jean becomes the Phoenix at the end of Days of Future Past because he looks into Logan's future. And if Charles, through Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, had been actively trying to do things to suppress Jean through Apocalypse that we were aware of and saw, that would have created a real interesting arc. That would have been a cool through line to see. Charles trying to prevent something he wasn't supposed to see. That would have been great. But they didn't go for that either.
And again, I think that's where like handing off issue 5 to the next creator to do issue 6 on his own.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Simon Kinberg, I'm not going to do this anymore. Good luck.
Sure.
I always kind of felt like with Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, First Class, Days of Future Past doesn't feel like it exists, if that makes sense. Like there's never any reference to it in the sense of Wolverine was there or I saw my future self. Like the event
It's like the weird event movie for the X-Men.
Yeah, it's like the event of they almost killed Nixon, that's there, but it's not. It doesn't matter. The rest of the movie didn't matter to the franchise. And I always found that was strange.
What would have been fascinating, because I really don't like what they do with Magneto in the end of Days of Future Past anyway, is if they'd wound up getting to this place where they were like, we were able to unite and do something good to like prevent a horrible future. What if like we found a way to work on that? And Apocalypse had actually been a time where Eric is trying that with Charles and the X-Men, and it falls through in Apocalypse. But that would have been cool to see, and that's where Eric goes and like, you know what, I'm just going to go make an island.
What's a beautiful... That what they try to do in the movie is that most of the time I don't think works. In the comics, you have decades to have Magneto do an ebb and flow of him being a good guy and a bad guy,
100%.
right? You have
That's the implication.
dozens of issues, but from movie to movie, he's a good guy and a bad guy in the same movie every single time, basically. And I'm like,
Yes.
It's too much. It's
is.
too much for any person to believe that
Yeah.
that he's this person.
My biggest thing, this is why X-Men First Class's ending bothered me so much, is that I'm like, there has to be more to this the relationship between Charles and Eric if you're telling me this takes place before X-Men, because Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen did an excellent scene when they were first introduced where they are talking to each other like these long-time, lifelong friends.
Yep.
And you can't convince me that they got that close in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sorry, First Class is not enough. So you got to give me more, and everything after that just doesn't do enough to do it.
Again, it's a weird thing where once you start making prequels, but then also like rewriting the timeline after Days of Future Past, like it becomes so muddled and so crazy. And I'm like, wow, you almost have to just watch these movies one by one. You can't take it as a whole, because as a whole, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
And that's something I actually came to terms with a long time ago, and
Yeah.
never. So my whole thing about the timeline, whenever people say it doesn't make sense, like, yeah, but who cares anymore? Like,
Well, I used
like
to-
for me, like, I stopped caring about Apocalypse.
Yeah.
To be fair, because if I did, it just became way more disappointing.
Yeah.
And Apocalypse was disappointing in its own right, but I just kind of looked at it like, this is a movie. This is a movie. This is a movie.
Yeah.
Like I can't look at it. Became too much to look at as a franchise because it just didn't work.
That's
because
fair,
there
yeah.
was nobody there doing that.
Yeah.
Nobody guiding the
me,
ship.
I know me personally, like, I prefer to think of Logan as a total different branch timeline. That
It's just a standalone. It's a standalone
in my
Wolverine movie.
in my opinion, it follows the events of the Wolverine, but in a version where they didn't have to do Days of Future Past.
Mhm.
And if that post-credit scene never happened, it just moved forward. That's where it fits for me.
Yeah.
But even then, it has its own issues. But at least makes some physical sense to me.
Guys, we haven't talked about our favorite X-Men movie. It came out in April of 2017. New Mutants. How did we miss that one?
Right.
It came out before Dark Phoenix. How did we miss it?
Yeah, Inhumans and Justice League Part 2 also came out this year, so go screw yourself.
Jeez Louise. That movie came out before Dark Phoenix was supposed to.
Yeah.
Wow. I just wanted to bring up New Mutants because that's hilarious.
We'll still get it. It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming.
For better or worse.
Could be good.
Watch me the best.
One of the it's like someone said to me, yeah, they keep threatening that New Mutants. They're like, yeah, threatening is actually a really good way to put it.
You're getting it.
You're gonna get it. You wait. Oh, it's coming. Yeah, it's kind of true. Yeah, overall, like, this has been largely a lot of like the cons and negativities that have come from this franchise. But it's not to say that there aren't things that show through. There's just a whole lot of like. I think there was a lot of room because X-Men was the film that kicked off the comic book superhero film, and I can grant it some leniencies in some of the earlier renditions.
In the
for
first
sure.
half of it, I can, but I
For
can't
sure.
afterwards.
But then at a certain point, it's like you needed to step up your game and recognize what you were doing and be more true to these characters. The fact that the MCU did birth around the time that X-Men First Class was happening, you kind of run out of excuses for like why the studio decided to just like not take advantage of everything they had at their at access to.
Wolverine
the resources
Origins
they could have.
and Onward is where I would say the studio interference got started in earnest.
I would 100% agree. And the unfortunate thing is that behind all that, nobody stepped in to be some kind of oversight, some guiding hand to say, this is the path. If you want to make a bunch of movies, this is how you can guide things.
You know what, Alex Kurtzman?
no, I'm okay.
I threw up a little bit in my
No,
mouth.
I'm cool.
I'm surprised you're the one who said that.
But I mean, nobody. Like, we say like, Bryan Singer came back and everything, but Bryan Singer still, it wasn't running anything consistent from one film to the next, because he did Days of Future Past and Apocalypse, and there's things hanging at the end of Days of Future Past that he never does anything with in Apocalypse.
Let's not even talk about like the end of Future Past with like the with the Mystique and Wolverine.
But
like,
that's like 100% part of it.
I don't
All of
understand.
these movies. So a lot of these movies end with some kind of tease of the potential of a future.
Nathaniel Essex.
And almost none of them pay off on it. The end of First Class is Magneto in his full-blown comic getup, and I'm like, if you're going to rush this, at least give me something cool. But you eliminate all the characters he went off with off-screen except for Mystique.
Which is the Nathaniel Essex like with the briefcase?
The
one?
Wolverine.
That's the Wolverine. Holy crap!
No,
No,
Apocalypse.
that's
That's
Apocalypse.
Is that Apocalypse? And
That's
they-
Apocalypse.
They still.
They didn't do anything, and then we got Dark Phoenix, and they still didn't do anything.
The rumors were that Nathaniel Essex was in Dark Phoenix, but they cut it. They cut it out. So all the setup.
I believe they cut it out probably at the script stage.
Yeah. Which is I guess a good idea.
But that's what's so weird.
Don't
is
set
it's
it
like,
up.
exactly. If you're not going to follow through on this, if you are becoming notorious for not following through on things, don't leave these teases that go nowhere.
That's what I was saying earlier, with how the X-Men films gave me something that I was looking forward to and then disappointed me.
Yeah.
The same with the costumes, and then the same with the, because I was trying to remember, is like, 'cause at the end of First Class, Magneto shows up comic accurate costume. I thought it was great. He's busting Emma
Kind of
Frost.
goofy, but yeah.
But he was still busting Emma Frost out of prison.
But it looks 60s as F, so I was okay with it.
And nothing. We got nothing.
Again,
and also okay, you know what really pisses me off about the newer X-Men films? The Magneto's damn helmet.
Yeah.
It keeps getting destroyed, misplaced. How the hell does he get it?
I don't think it's ever been misplaced, to be fair. I don't think Magneto's ever been like, where's my helmet?
Emma, where's my helmet?
So he gets it from Shaw. Cool. It was taken when he was arrested for Kennedy. Cool. And then gone in freaking Apocalypse. Apocalypse makes him a new one. And then all of a sudden in Dark Phoenix, he's had it all the whole time.
Is it not the same one from Apocalypse?
No,
sure it's the one from
it's not
Apocalypse.
from Apocalypse. I guarantee you it's not from Apocalypse.
You've recently watched Apocalypse and you know this?
When was the last time we watched Apocalypse?
It's been a few years. Oh, no. I know for some reason designs like that stupid thing, I have...
Look, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm having a hard time believing it.
You can't be this sure
I
for
don't
a
think
movie
you
you
can be
haven't
this
seen.
It's
sure.
definitely not the same one from Apocalypse.
Okay, that's fine.
It's definitely not.
The problem we talk about, like, again, setting up, like, this is, again, if this was pre-MCU, I'd be a little more okay with it. But
And
now
some of them are, yeah.
And now it's post-MCU, and specifically, which Apocalypse had the Nathaniel Essex one, right? We are past Avengers. We are in, like, Iron Man 3. We are past this, like, post-credit scenes are set up things. And every time Marvel does it, they do the setup in the next movie. That's what Marvel does. They're great at it. How does X-Men continue to do this after it's been proven how you do it? Like, man, it just bums me out.
And another thing is that they'll run rampant through, like, just deciding to, like, toss out new characters. And I do mean, like, just, like, toss them out. And it's like, hey, they look cool. Use their power. Put them there. And then not explore them and then toss them away for the next film. Toad could have come back in X2 or X3.
Psylocke is like a waste.
I would have rather had Toad and Sabretooth back, even by different actors if need be, in X-Men 3 than all of the leather-wearing,
That would have been dope.
tattooed new dudes who meant nothing.
You didn't
We're
love...
bad because we wear leather and have tattoos.
Do you remember the guy in
They're
X3
other.
that fights Wolverine and he throws a punch and Wolverine cuts his arm off and his arm goes back and then he punches Wolverine again, he cuts his arm off and he's like, "Come on, Wolverine!" and then he kicks him in the
Thank you
nuts.
for bringing that up. So that's another thing. If you watch
Stupid.
X-Men to X-Men 3 in a row, you see a sudden hard humor tonal shift in X-Men 3 that does not work.
Brett Ratner.
Yeah.
Ben's right. The helmet is different in in Apocalypse 2, Dark Phoenix.
So that's another thing that's unexplained then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
What it's
Shocking.
once again, it's okay. So like Ryan said, the films after Future Class or
No,
First
Future
Class,
You're right.
Days of Future Class.
that's a title.
Days of First Past.
Days of Future Class.
Dark
is
Apocalypse.
Cool. Ooh.
Here
really
we
Dark
cool.
Polyps.
had the snowball begin.
These are cool.
Do you guys remember where the
Elseworlds.
F-bomb is in Apocalypse?
Unfortunately,
Yes, it's awful.
wait,
I don't.
wait,
Remind me.
What
It's
in the
Scott.
Apoca fuck?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Who says that?
who's that? I don't remember this.
No,
this?
isn't it Scott? And he's an Apocalypse.
In
No,
Apocalypse.
not the I'm gonna F and kill you. No.
No,
No,
I don't.
It's
remember.
what in the Apoca F word.
But who says it?
Angel. The new Warren.
Oh, you mean the drunk cage fighting Warren?
Yes, the
Who's
drunk
listening
cage
to
fighting
Metallica?
Warren.
On that, I think we should wrap this up.
Hey guys, read House of X and Powers of X when they come out.
Although best F bomb comes from Wolverine when
Best
Charles.
F-bomb does come from Wolverine.
Yeah.
in
also
First
maybe
Class.
the best cameo. Maybe
Yeah,
Like,
definitely the best cameo because they show up and they're like, "Hey, it's
Oh,
because it was
you know what?
marketed as a movie without Wolverine."
Yeah.
And I was really like, "Okay, I could dig this because it's like the First Class, it's the first X-Men." And then they sit down, I was like, "I'm Charles Xavier. I'm Eric Lischner. Go F yourself."
I
Okay.
don't
Beautiful.
think Wolverine's cameo in Apocalypse works at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't think it works.
Yeah,
even
we
in the
didn't really
slightest.
talk about that.
The
on there,
outfit
but
is
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
it is
Yeah, but it's
super
cool.
cool. Yeah.
But I think
That's the only good thing I can
especially-
say about it.
Especially having Hugh Jackman there becomes creepy that he's with Jean Grey in that moment.
yes, because she's a teenager.
And it doesn't. There's no reason. There's no story reason why there should be an alkali lake. There's just it serves no purpose.
No.
We'll run down to our end real soon. I'm just gonna quickly scroll through, and I'm gonna pick out some positives that I did take notes on. So here we go. Okay. The introduction of Wolverine in the original X-Men film is pretty cool. Could you imagine a film where that was just cameo setup for a sequel, and that was all you saw of Logan in that movie?
That'd be
How
dope.
crazy would that be? Feels like something we could get today. Okay. The score is appropriately weird in 90s, and I enjoy it.
Mystique's theme is awesome. It's like wow, 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 wow,
Yes,
wow, wow.
exactly.
Oh, and like X-Men 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
Ian McKellen is just too effing good for these movies, even in the bad ones.
Yes.
That's just true. I really
Charles.
like the scene where Logan stabs Rogue in his sleep.
Yeah, that's a good scene.
Yeah,
That's
me
a really
too.
good scene.
Oh,
The
that's a good
Magneto.
scene.
Oh my god, I love this one. Magneto's hideout in X-Men 1 gives me mad Batman and Robin vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole
Real
film
good.
actually feels like the next step in comic book movie evolution from the later Batman films.
Yeah.
When I
If-
put it through that
If
lens.
you track from the Batman films through the Burton to Schumacher to Blade to X-Men,
it really makes sense.
really does make sense.
Charles doesn't know how Eric is shielding himself from Cerebro, but he should because Eric helped him build it.
Again, things like
Timeline.
that. They should
Yeah,
know each other for
yeah.
50 years.
Oh, the entire scene with Magneto's standoff with the police with the guns is one of the best scenes in comic book movies.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll agree with
I
that.
couldn't believe that was the first movie too.
With the bullet, just like
with
slowly
him
going
holding
in
all
his
the
head.
guns and the bullets there, and he's like, "I can't stop them all, Charles."
Also, the guy with who's the because we found, it's the guy who has the bullet on his head where he's just like, that's Captain Singh from Flash.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
I never
Oh,
re-
weird.
20
Yes.
years earlier, he looks the
Uh-huh.
same.
yeah. It's a negative. It's about Origins Wolverine. The cinematography is slow, sloppy. I can't even understand it. Like there's just
Random zooms.
like the shot of Zero shooting a cigar and then slowly zooming in on Logan constantly. I
Hey,
don't even understand.
X-Men Origins Wolverine is the only time where they ever use CGI claws, and it's real bad.
And they look really bad. That was another note I was going to say.
Oh
Okay,
my God,
I'm
it
not
looks
going to talk
bad.
anymore about that movie. Oh, yes, I am. One more. How stupid! I mentioned it in the car, but how stupid is it that they decided to split Emma Frost into two separate characters, her telepathy power and her diamond skin, into two sisters?
Yeah.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Yes.
Could they be?
Oh, that's
Could
what.
they-
Oh, that's dumb.
Could they be Emma's
They're not the
daughters?
Stepford Cuckoos who are clones of Emma Frost.
You mean,
They're
but then,
not.
yeah, no, it's okay.
And that's weird because so First Class and Origins were developed around the same time. So they knew Emma Frost was going to be in both those movies.
Ugh.
A regular-looking Hank McCoy showed up in a bar scene in X2.
Yeah,
Yes,
he did.
He does.
Super weird.
I love it.
Kelsey Grammer?
No.
No.
different
Oh,
actor.
It's just like a in the TV in the background.
He's secretary of something. He's a secretary.
Eric pulling the iron out of the guard's blood is one of the best things in that movie.
Yeah.
and I still love it.
I love the breakout scene in X2.
X2's great.
Bobby's family is underexplored in their issues with mutants, specifically his brother who decides to call the cops.
Yeah.
He's just grumpy.
Yeah, I like it.
Screw you, brother.
Have you tried not being a mutant?
It's
Also, praising X2, the moment when Logan has to kill the girl with adamantium and her real self returns because she was being controlled sucks. That is
what
some
one?
sad X2.
Oh yeah.
Lady Deathstrike.
Yes, because
Deathstrike.
because she was being controlled, and in that last moment, you see her real self return as
Yep.
she's having adamantium pulse outside of her.
Oh, I
Yeah.
remember. Oh, that scene is brutal.
Lady Deathstrike is so cool.
Eric pulling all the pins out of the grenades from all the dudes around the corner and letting them all blow up. That's pretty nuts.
X2's a great movie.
I do like the come around on the kid with the forked tongue sticking it out at Stryker at the end of the film after he'd used it for a joke in the earlier film. Good filmmaking. Chilling how he tells Wolverine that one day someone will finish what he started. Cut to Logan.
Logan.
Oh,
Logan.
Yep. I have nothing positive to say about X3.
no one does. Well,
Let me
I
think.
said
Kelsey
a-
Grammer.
Nothing that we didn't already say.
Yeah.
Nothing that we didn't already go through. I think.
Oh, I didn't mention this earlier. Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man. The one
yes.
scene that he's in where he pretends to be 100 people to fool the cops. I think that's cool.
I really love the power of Logan's entire moment with the bear and then following up with the guys in the bar. This is
Yeah.
the Wolverine.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
the Wolverine
Yeah.
starts
Um,
hella strong.
Especially, I just love where he like just buries the arrow in his hand. He's like, "Ask me where I got it. Go on, ask me where I got it. Where'd you get it? Funny you should ask."
Yeah.
The
I like that
implication.
sequence a lot.
The implication that Logan is seeking an honorable death and an end to his pain is really great. I really find the offer to let him live out an ordinary life intriguing.
The Wolverine is the best version of Wolverine from the comics.
Yeah, the way that they carry over all of his pain over Jean really works in the film, which is surprising considering how little you care about it prior to that point.
All right, I know you guys don't like the Silver Samurai, but I really dig the.
I like the Silver Samurai.
Oh, you do? All right, cool. But I really, really dig the design.
I don't think anybody shit on the Silver Samurai today, Ben.
I don't like.
Liked it.
Well, I know you shit on
Liked
it
it.
before.
I don't like the third act because it devolves
Sure.
into what I.
See,
yeah.
I like the third act.
Yeah,
for me the third act works.
I just like the design. I like robots like that.
I thought
I thought it was cool.
I think it's actually really interesting if you watch the Wolverine and Logan back to back. They're pretty much the same movie.
That's one of the reasons why in my mind you have to go from that and just skip Days of Future Past
Sure.
and go to Logan. I think that they work too well as a pair.
Yeah.
They have a very similar story structure and the thematic structure. They're both about trying to get a girl across a country.
Yes.
They both have Wolverine with little to no healing factor.
Yes.
It's very interesting watching those two together.
It really is. All the action starting at the funeral is so visually engaging and a blast to watch every time.
Especially when he's drugged.
Yes, and the film has a good sense of humor and how it wields it, like Logan tossing the guy into a pool and Yoriko asking how he knew it was there, because he didn't.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was really good.
And his entire fight in the snow later is also excellent.
Hell
His
yeah,
way up to the tower.
Ninjas.
I think this is in the extended cut of the Wolverine.
Unrated.
Where he's on the oil tanker and he's just like, "Hey, ninjas," and he's just like lighting a cigar and he just drops the cigar into the oil tanker and rides the explosion. It's
yeah.
so cool.
That's not in the original movie?
I don't think so.
Wow.
I could be misremembering.
Yeah.
Some of the best cinematography of the franchise exists in X-Men First Class. This is set up in, like, Matthew Vaughn knows how to do some great shots, and some of these are like Eric, whenever he's threatening Nazis, there's just really great framing of his face reflecting on other things while he's facing them, and you're just watching their reactions. Really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I like that scene in the bar a lot.
I know.
Oh, in Argentina?
Mike wasn't super heavy hot on like Magneto Nazi Hunter. I am.
Super.
I'm super hot.
Super
No,
hot on
no,
that.
that's not what he was saying.
No?
What Mike was saying is
What's
that
he
he
saying?
does like that. He just wishes that it wasn't then undercut by all the other crap things that were
Okay.
happening with the other characters.
Gotcha. Okay, my bad. Okay.
Props to Michael Fassbender because he speaks 4 languages in that movie.
Very often, even though he is a mishandled character pretty much throughout the entire franchise, Eric Lencher is probably one of the better characters like in all of the films.
No, 100%.
That he's in. That he's the
100%.
only one given real proper meat. The Hellfire Club gets teased and they do nothing with it. Whee!
Big.
When
yikes.
does Hellfire get
First
clubbed?
class.
Oh,
First
that's
Class.
right. Yep, I remember now. I remember.
They destroyed all the Hellfire Club when they killed Kevin Bacon, obviously.
I really like that there's a CIA guy who's just like, oh man, I'm real excited to have found mutants. Here you go, guys. Come use my facility.
Oliver Platt doesn't have a name in that movie.
No, he doesn't.
That's how do you make a movie and not give a character a name?
yeah.
It's not like he's like Mr. Nobody from like a secret
I'm
organization.
sure the script has a name for him, but probably
But
never says it.
They
in the
never
movie.
say it in the movie, and I'm like, I don't know what to call him.
Well, they also never say Jessica Chastain's name in Dark Phoenix.
They say Vuk. 100%. They say Vuk. 100%.
Oh, I don't
They do.
They say it multiple times.
Another thing that bothered me in First Class, just a little one, is that I'm disappointed in Charles for being disappointed in the teenagers for acting like teenagers for the first time that they're around other people like them. Kind of doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, the score is excellent.
Hell yeah.
Oh, one of my favorite lines in First Class is this one, and it's from Zoe Kravitz. It's, I'd rather a bunch of guys stare at me with my clothes off than the way these guys stare at me.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite lines. Another one of my favorite lines from the franchise comes from X3, actually, and it's Eric, and he says, oh, I promise you, I have a mark as well, and no needle will ever touch my skin again.
Yeah, it's
and
good.
that's a great line.
Oh, is it? It's actually in X-Men Origins. It's a really great line. It's like it's something about America, and he's like blah blah blah. Something. He's like, I'm Canadian. It's like the one time.
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah,
one
yeah.
time I laughed in that movie.
It's your American duty.
No, yeah. It's like, it's your, oh yeah, he's saying something that's like, your country needs you because he's American. He's like, I'm Canadian.
And he
Drives away.
I thought I got a laugh out of that.
This is mostly for Ryan. Ray Wise has a little role in First Class, and it's awesome.
He does.
Good
He
old
does.
Leland Palmer.
Hell yeah. He's the
I
president.
talked about. No, he's just like he's not the president. He's just like a guy
He's there,
in the
like-
war room
okay,
who's
yeah,
like leading it. Yeah.
Got it.
The multi-panel shots is also some excellent cinematography. Again, going back to that Charles actually teaching the students moment, which I hope that future X-Men films actually allow them to teach the kids.
montage scene in First Class is good.
Fassbender is so good in this movie. He has the scene with the mom where he's seeing the candles that Charles gives to him, and he reveals he didn't know he still had it. God, that's the stuff that really gets me in that movie.
There's the. Do you have the what's it called? The satellite moving thing.
That was that section right
Okay,
there
yeah.
where he's seeing he does that.
Oh,
right
sorry.
after.
Yeah. I'd really like to see because Charles starts crying because he's seeing what
and
Eric's seeing.
Eric's,
and
but
he has to wipe away his tears. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's really beautiful.
But I'm so impressed with how they hold that shot on Eric while they're showing. Also, X-Men First Class has probably the best visual, like camera-wise, use of showing people with telepathy powers that I think any of the films had. Would you agree with that, Brandon? You didn't listen, did you?
Not to that point. I'm sorry.
I was saying that I think First Class has the best use of visual camera language for telepathy powers.
Yes.
The way that they'll blend things over other characters
I
and you'll
agree
see
with
them
that.
reacting to it.
I really like Matthew Vaughn's directing style. His shooting style is really intriguing, and I First Class works for me a lot of the reason because of his directing style.
Also, I do think it is a great moment when Charles feels Eric killing Shaw.
That's an awesome scene.
Yeah.
That's with the coin going through the head. That's
That's
great.
so good.
That's so cool. I like that scene a lot.
And
That's when Magneto starts to go Irish for a second.
Aye, aye, aye.
I can feel your guns moving in the water.
And
what are you doing?
One other positive from Days of Future Past that I didn't cover is we definitely talked about in the car, Ryan. It's the one moment that I feel like Eric and Charles are actually given to flesh anything out, and it doesn't get to happen enough in that movie.
Oh, on the plane?
Is on the plane when they're.
That's my favorite scene in the movie. Yeah.
Charles is saying Eric abandoned them, and Eric turns on him and says, "No, you abandoned us.
You
Charles."
abandoned us all.
And that's really good.
He's staying put as the plane starts
Yes.
turning. It's
Yes.
so cool.
That I wish there was more of that between the two of them in that film, but it's just the film doesn't allow for that in that one.
I do like how that
And those are some positive notes.
I do like how he starts that conversation where he brings the chessboard. It's like, fancy a game, and Charles is like, screw you, no.
No.
And then he gives them plays chess.
I really like all the scenes where they play chess. I think those are some of the best scenes in the whole franchise.
One of my favorite chess scenes is at the end of X-Men 1.
Yep. And then X2 is a good chess sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
You should have killed me when you had the chance, Charles.
I'm pretty burnt out on the X-Men. I don't think I need to talk about the X-Men forever.
I mean, I'm about to start reading more X-Men than I've ever read in my entire life.
I'm
so I can keep
also
going.
going to start reading more X-Men.
Did you pick up House of X today?
Dude, I'm broke.
I know you'd like a while back wanted to like flesh out some Fox X-Men stuff. I
Yeah.
feel like now it has been fleshed out.
Yes. And much like
Skinned and bared.
and much like we fleshed out the MCU, I never need to do it again.
Right.
When's the next Conjuring movie coming out?
God damn.
I know you're far more positive on this franchise, and I'm not trying to say like I'm nowhere near as hard against all of it as Mike is, and respect to his opinions and everything for sure. I'm glad that he was here with us, but I wish he could
have stayed longer.
I think what's far more interesting about it is just to look at like just how they got handled by the people behind it, by the studio, where the missteps were, and optimistically, I mean, it's Marvel Studios, so why would we worry? But
I'm not.
hopefully where they'll have learned the proper lessons from mistakes made before.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Sorry about the dog.
Hey, man.
That's all right.
Dogs are cool.
Okay. So the next time we talk something to death will probably be Star Wars.
Yeah, you got 5 months for that.
All right. So I guess that'll do it.
Hell yeah.
Thank you to everyone who.
Oh my god, guys. The X-Men are dead now.
The X-Men are gone.
This is like, I mean, like, I'm very excited for like the future with Marvel Disney, but like, it's not often that like a long-running franchise is finally dead
Yeah.
until New Mutants comes out, but that doesn't really count.
And it's unfortunate that it's dead and didn't end.
Yeah, it is dead. It ended badly, and it's dead.
Yeah. It is. That's kind of how I've been feeling. I was like, yeah, the X-Men franchise is gone, and
Yeah.
I've been like, yeah, I like a lot of those. I like a lot of the movies. I don't like some of them as a whole. The franchise is fine,
Mhm.
but there is something. I feel really, and part of the reason why I wanted to flesh out these topics and talk about them sometimes is, with Dark Phoenix, why I was so positive probably is because I feel weird knowing that there was a franchise that went for 20 years of my life and is now just
because
over.
We are in a world where like everything gets rebooted. We get a Top Gun sequel 30 years later, but like X-Men started at a weird time where like it was one of the first superhero movies, but it just ran its course, and now it had an actual like an 80-year lifespan.
Yeah.
It wasn't cut short; it lived its life.
Yeah, it was one of the first.
Arguably
Super-
lived longer than it should have.
Yeah. But X-Men was also one of the first really critically acclaimed superhero
Yes.
films.
That first one was loved.
Because I remember like people were talking big about Batman. They were talking big. They're like, oh my god, when Batman Returns was coming out, people were like, oh my god, we have another good Batman movie. Then Forever and Batman Robin came out, and then they're like, okay, well, comic book movies suck. And then we got X-Men in that, and then we got Spider-Man, and then it's like,
Blade.
holy shit.
People
I
often forget about Blade.
I'm talking about like the kid-friendly ones where take the whole family to see.
Blade is its own weird thing. Like if Blade never came out, like the Marvel trajectory would probably still be the same because of X-Men.
Sure. It's a weird thing. I kind of liken it to a little bit like Harry Potter. But Harry Potter had a larger impact on my life than the X-Men films do.
For sure.
Definitely.
But it is kind of strange.
Also, that isn't done. So
Not
Yeah, we're
anymore.
getting worse movies.
it's done for you.
It's done for me. Hell
It
yeah.
might as well be done.
No, it's done for me too. I'm burnt out on Harry Potter.
I definitely can't go see another one in theaters after that.
I'll tell you what. I was thinking about this. If we reviewed all 5 films in the Fantastic Beasts franchise, it would be the only franchise that would have started and ended in the entire time that we've done the show.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
so far.
So
So
far.
far.
Yeah, okay.
God.
I dig it.
So
I won't do it.
you know,
I
there's
don't want
that.
Maybe one of them will be really good.
Isn't that?
Maybe.
No, I'm not gonna ask it.
to. All right.
So yes. So let's get out of here.
Yeah. Anyone
take
else
a-
have any final
I'm ready to
thoughts on the Fox
exit
thing?
this conversation.
Exit.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty much done here.
This was really fun, though. I'm really glad because, like, yeah.
I don't think I said it on air, but I know we talked about it in the car. Last Stand did make me feel like I was a little hard on Dark Phoenix because, wow, Last Stand is real bad.
Last Stand's really bad.
Dark Phoenix at least lets Jean have a character.
Yeah.
It might not be the best character. It might not be as fleshed out as I want it to be. It certainly is still a lackluster film. But, man, is
It's
it
not
better.
The Last Stand.
But it's not The Last Stand.
Last Stand sucks.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, that'll do it. Goodbye, X-Men, I guess.
Until
Till we meet
a
again.
couple more
Do
years.
we want to rank them? No.
No.
Let's not do that. It's just
I'm
going to
not
make us
prepared
sad.
for that.
No, we're not.
Um,
But at least we got the comics. House of X just came out,
Oh my God, yes.
and it's great.
so yeah, goodbye the X-Men until we meet again in the MCU.
Until your new gods arrive.
I say so next week. Let's look forward to our Boys episode, our Hobbs and
Boys.
Shaw special,
Sure.
and obviously we have the Mike's Impossible Trivia Challenge that is on air right now if you're listening to this. So definitely check that one out. And thank you to everyone who listens. Thank you to Mike Matola, who couldn't be here for the rest of the episode, but thank you so much for sticking around and doing this with us.
You're the best.
It was really great to have him on both episodes.
Yeah,
love
that was
that
really
guy.
awesome.
For some fun, check out the Next Impossible Trivia Challenge. Thank you to everyone who listens. We greatly appreciate it. If I figured it out and you're listening to this on our Patreon, thanks.
Thank you.
I mean, either I didn't figure it out or you guys didn't pledge. So, but either way,
Hey, pledged is pledged.
either way,
Pledged is pledged.
either way, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
We greatly appreciate all the listens we get. Thank you to Jeremy Vellucci, who does our intro musics and segment intros and outros, and he has a show.
Does Jeremy love the X-Men?
No.
Okay.
He likes them.
What were you gonna say?
I'll bring it up later because it's something that I realized we needed to say in the other episode
Oh, okay.
about Downright Nerdy Podcast because they gave us a pretty nice shout out.
Heck yeah, they
Sure.
did.
We did not thank them for it.
Well, as of recording this, our other episode isn't even done being recorded.
Look at
so
that.
there you go.
How does podcasting work?
We're all over the place.
Thank you to Jeremy Vellucci. Does all of our things. He has shirts up on TeePublic for our TeePublic. Link is in the description. He has a show called Server and Proctologist. Thank you to Mike Matola, who did our logo for both this show and Miscellaneous. And thank you again for being on the show. Greatly appreciate you can find him at Mike Matola. For Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all at FakeNerd Podcast, FakeNerdGuys@gmail.com. I'm at BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. Ben?
BenMagnet27 on Instagram and Twitter.
Ryan?
DJ Tony Snark at everything.
Sparks?
Sparks Witty on Instagram. SPARKZ Witter.
Subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, rate and review wherever you get us. We greatly appreciate it. Until next week, guys, stay fake nerds.
To me, my X-Men.
No. More like Homo Inferior.
Oh.
Jesus. Well, now I got to keep that in.
Sorry.
That's good. I'm going to put that at the end.
Fair enough. I've been doing that a lot with videos.